Chapter 359. Its huge body was boundless, filling the entire human eyeball. Its 10 tails swayed with the wind, and its back was covered with sharp thorn-like spikes. The blood-red eyes were particularly ferocious and terrifying, and circles of black ripples were clearly visible. The only difference was that perhaps it lacked the Kyubi's yang chakra, and it was just a simple 6 tomo. The monster's mouth had saliva like saliva, which was particularly disgusting. Even Dustless couldn't help but feel nauseous. He secretly compared the goddess of Uno with the Jubi in front of him, and his expression couldn't help but stiffen. Especially the saliva that fell from the Jubi's mouth made Dustless feel disgusted. Ouch! The angry roar resounded through the sky, and the roaring sound made even Dustless dizzy. The violent chakra produced a hurricane that made people feel like they were living in the eye of a tornado, and their hearts were full of despair. Not to mention fighting with this exaggerated monster in front of them, they didn't even have the heart to resist. The boundless chakra spread out like a tide, and even the land hundreds of kilometers away from the battle could feel this terrible chakra wave. The Jubi was a combination of chakra, the origin of all things in the world, and the sound it made was naturally not comparable to ordinary tailed beasts. The difference between the Kyubi and the Jubi was only one tail, but in fact, it was a world of difference. Dozens of Kyubi together couldn't cause any damage to the Jubi. After all, the Jubi was immortal. "It's over," Obito, who was on the back of the Jubi, said indifferently. His eyes were as quiet as stagnant water, and he looked at Dustless, Sasuke and Naruto with indifference. The deep and emotionless Samsara eyes could see the three of them dead. At the same time, a conduit sprang out of the Jubi's body, connecting it and Obito's body tightly together. Obito's control of the Jubi seemed to have improved, and the roaring Jubi under his feet also quieted down, quietly swaying its 10 thick tails. "It's just the initial form of the Jubi, it gave you so much confidence, Obito?" With a thick sneer on his handsome face, Dustless looked at Obito with a smile. As for the Jubi under his feet, Dustless simply ignored it. "You don't know what death is." Raising his eyelids, Obito glanced at Dustless with pity and said indifferently, "Since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish." It's no wonder that Obito is so confident. This world is actually a world of chakra. Whoever has more chakra will have a higher chance of winning. The Jubi under his feet is a collection of chakra, the source of everything. Go to hell. After saying that, the Jubi opened its big mouth full of fangs and high-density dark chakra gushed out from its chest cavity, and the condensed sphere grew from small to big, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a huge Bijidama. What an amazing guy. With an emerald luster, Dustless did not hesitate to enter the chakra mode of the Tensigen. After all, the opponent is the Jubi, not some random cat or dog, so he must treat it with caution. "Take your Bijubi and go to hell to repent." Dustless shook his arm gently, and several green beads behind him floated in front of him, and in the blink of an eye, they liquefied and turned into a dirty light beam condensed in the palm of his hand. Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. Raising his glossy arm, he swept down, and the golden light beam also stretched out without limit, turning into a golden light sword that stretched for more than 10 kilometers, mercilessly slashing towards the Jubi and the Jubi. Although the light beam didn't have a blade, no one dared to underestimate him. Puchi. The golden light whistled down, and the giant black Bijubi was penetrated by the golden light, and some cracks appeared in the middle, but obviously the Jubi's Bijubi was extraordinary, and it didn't explode as expected. But there were many flaws and cracks, and as the Jubi's chakra continued to erupt, in less than a second the previous gap was repaired, and the Jubi's Bijubi continued to grow. Not bad at all. Seeing this, Dustless was not angry but happy. The Jubi was completely different from other tailed beasts, and there was no comparison at all. Whoosh! At the same time, the Bijidama of the 10-tailed beast was also condensed and thrown out with all its strength. The black energy ball rolled over, but Wu Qin just turned into elements with a frivolous expression. The sky was so dark that it was almost crushed by the tailed beast, but the pulsating golden light was particularly clear. Unlike the light of dawn, this golden beam of light symbolized an even greater calamity. Boom! Boom! A huge flame swept across the void, and the blazing impact with high temperature swept every inch of the sky, annihilating everything, and the drifting clouds were also inevitably swallowed. Has he been killed? Seeing the unusually clean sky, Obito's face was full of hope and desire. Dustless was a nightmare for him, and this kind of shadow could never be wiped away, and only by completely killing him would he be able to calm down. Living under the same sky as Dustless was a kind of torture for Obito. The ideal was beautiful, but the reality was extremely cruel. In the endless void, a golden flash swept across and countless light particles gathered from all directions, and the light turned from nothingness to reality, and a thin figure suddenly appeared in the void. As expected of the Jubi? But I am very curious about a question. As the voice fell, Dustless's body disappeared again as if he had never appeared, and only a playful and lazy voice lingered in the sky. Facing such a peerless and unparalleled speed, Obito could only smile bitterly. Even with the existence of the Jubi, his passive situation did not change. Jubi, you are so powerful, have you ever been kicked by a light beam? Chapter 360. A ghostly voice sounded without warning. Obito was stunned, and his face immediately turned ugly. Dustless's biggest highlight was not his mysterious ninjutsu. Its greatest advantage was its lightning-like speed. It came and went without a trace, like a dragon whose tail could not be seen. Every time Dustless turned into a beam of light and began to act shamelessly, it also meant that the person he attacked was about to be eliminated. This inevitable truth was the result of many battles with Dustless. When Dustless's body was covered in golden light, it meant that it was time for game over. Yo, this look is quite scary. The beam of light converged in front of the Jubi's pupils. Dustless looked at the monster in front of him with a cheeky smile, looking straight at the scarlet eyes of the Jubi. His right leg shone brightly and was swallowed by the bright golden light. This is my return gift, Jubi. Lightspeed kick. Unlike the previous close physical contact, this time it was just a straight ray of light that shot out from Dustless's foot. The light went straight into the eyes of the Jubi. Dustless would not be merciful. The Jubi was an immortal super-existence, and the dramatic scene of its soul being shattered by a kick would not happen. The dazzling light came ruthlessly, and the Jubi instinctively blocked in front of its eyes with its rough big hands. No matter what creature it was, the eyes were its most vulnerable part. Boom boom boom. Awoo! The giant beast's movement instincts did not change, and the cumbersome Jubi was not good at moving. Its jerky movements could not keep up with the speed of light. The blade-like luster directly burned the blood-red eyes of the Jubi. The painful roar exploded, and the angry roar shook the sky. Bang bang bang, the Jubi seemed to have gone berserk as it hammered the ground crazily. The violent vibration spread out, and the land dozens of kilometers away could easily feel a towering resentment. Awoo! The big mouth opened and a strong wave of air erupted. The wind was full of wind and the mountain in the distance directly cracked. The earth shattered like a spider web. This was the essence of the Jubi. His existence was destruction. Even the slightest movement would create an incomparable sound. Things would be annihilated along with his venting of hatred. If you want to hate that you don't know, armament hockey. Dustless, who was bathed in the storm, looked calm and stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at the Jubi's big mouth full of fangs, and his eyes were full of schadenfreude. Only the strange power of Haki could touch the elementalization and capture the body of the Logia ability user. He straightened his thumb and golden light gathered at the tip. He was aiming at the depths of the Tentail's mouth. Laser. Against the strong wind and waves, the golden light swept past and pierced towards the Tentail's mouth with all its might. However, it was obvious that the Jubi was much smarter this time. It used its rough arm to block in advance and perfectly resisted the erosion of the light. Only a small burn wound was left on its arm. Combined with its huge body, the wound was not worth mentioning. In particular, it healed the next second after being injured. Its recovery ability was much more abnormal than Hashirama's. Creak. Creak. The sawtooth full of fangs clenched slightly, making a strange sound that made people's scalp numb and shudder. It was not difficult to see from the slightly raised mouth of the Jubi that it was extremely proud at this moment. It was smiling at Dustless even though it looked a bit strange. It seemed to be silently mocking Dustless for overestimating himself. I'm actually being looked down upon by a beast. This posture seems to be despising and looking down on me? Looking with interest at the Jubi who seemed to be showing off, Dustless's eyes flashed with a hidden chill. He suddenly realized that he was indeed a little mischievous before. Moves such as Lightspeed Kick and Laser were powerful, but if he wanted to cause damage to the Jubi who had an incredible recovery ability, it was still somewhat insufficient. Damn boy, I hope you won't be torn to pieces by the beast in your mouth. Good luck. Black Zetsu, who was carefully observing the center of the battlefield, was angry and his face was twitching. Dustless called the Jubi a beast. How could he not be angry? For him, this was more uncomfortable than eating 10 pounds of flies. It was simply a direct slap in the face. Black Zetsu was also created by Huiji, so Dustless was indirectly scolding Black Zetsu by pointing at his nose. Roar! The insignificant ant in front of him provoked him time and time again. The Jubi could no longer suppress his anger. Now he had no consciousness and wisdom, but he was completely following his instincts. The nerves that were reflected in his mind were telling him to completely erase Wu Chen. Zhou Qian's thick arms suddenly raised, covering the sky and the earth. The originally clear sky was covered by a dark shadow, revealing sharp claws that were as sharp as blades, sweeping towards Dustless. The cold light on the claws could penetrate everything. Dustless was uncharacteristically calm. He calmly stared at the approaching claws. Instead, his body erupted with golden chakra. Obviously, Dustless did not intend to use the elemental transformation to escape from the Jubi's attack. The elemental transformation was only a passive defense. If he wanted to defeat the Jubi, he still needed to suppress it with absolute strength. Blindly running away was useless. The Jubi would not bow down to Dustless just because he could ignore and be immune to physical attacks. If he wanted to tame this unruly super monster, he must show absolute strength. As for illusion, Dustless was really not good at it. The golden chakra that was so dense that it was solid continued to erupt and surge. It quickly condensed into a giant that was hundreds of feet high, was exposed to the sun in the blink of an eye. Chapter 361. Dustless continued to spew chakra unscrupulously, and naturally the height of the golden giant also continued to increase, and the sturdy heavy armor became deeper and stronger, and the 100-meter tall body was not proportional to the Jubi. However, this was just the beginning. Senjutsu, the special chakra that contained the aura of nature, gushed out, and the complete Kinsusanu also quietly changed. Mysterious runes poured into the Kinsusanu's body like a gem inlaid on it. In an instant, the complete Kinsusanu's height erupted by dozens of feet. This is impossible. How can there be such an exaggerated Kinsusanu? Obito on the back of the Jubi was in disbelief, and his eyes subconsciously swept towards the distant sky. Uchiha Madara's famous unique skill, Kinsusanu, was only more than 100 meters high. The exaggerated chakra in front of him had an incredible height of 50 or 60 feet, which is nearly 200 meters in height. I have said many times, my eye power is not comparable to Uchiha Madara's. Ninjutsu has no limit, the user is strong, and the technique used is also so. Looking down at Obito, Dustless explained in a matter-of-fact tone. He has the eternal Menjikyu Sharingan, and in addition he has the Tensigen and Rinsei Sharingan. If his eye power is not comparable to Uchiha Madara's, it is better to find a place where there is no one and commit suicide as soon as possible. Puchi. There was a ripple in the air, and the complete Kinsusanu's chakra fell, and the sharp white light cut through the thorns and easily passed through the strong arm of the Jubi. Boom. Thick smoke and dust splashed on the ground, and the arm full of sharp barbs fell to the ground, smashing a deep pit. Looking up, the left arm of the Jubi was broken. There is no doubt that the arm on the ground is the broken arm of the Jubi. Unbelievable, someone actually managed to cut off the 10-tailed beast's arm. Staring at the severed arm on the ground, Obito's expression inevitably became gloomy. The body of the Jubi is undoubtedly the toughest existence in the world, but now it was cut off so easily by Dustless. How could he not be surprised? After a brief moment of surprise, Obito regained his indifference, and he was not worried about the Jubi's predicament after losing an arm. Goo goo, suddenly the sound of squirming could be heard. An exuberant life force came from the front. The boundless life force gave people the absurd feeling of breaking out of a cocoon and turning something rotten into something magical. Dustless was slightly startled. He subconsciously looked at the left arm of the 10 tails, and a touch of emotion flashed in his eyes. It shouldn't be possible. Thinking of a certain possibility, Dustless's pupils also widened as he stared at the broken arm of Jubi in disbelief. As Jubi suddenly exerted force, it grew back exactly the same as before. It seems that it is still a little uncomfortable with the new arm. The Jubi moved its arm instinctively, and then roared at Dustless. Inexorably, Wu Qin seemed to understand the beast language of the Arabian Nights. The unprepossessing 10 tails in front of him was demonstrating to him. No wonder this guy can only be sealed and can't be completely killed, Dustless murmured to himself. He suddenly remembered that Uchiha Madara was pierced by the Hashiman Kai in the later stage, and he also relied on the power of the Jubi in his body to regrow his limbs. It is no wonder that Otsutsuki Hagoromo and Otsutsuki Himura could only seal him and couldn't kill him. But the so-called Jubi is just SOSO. Next is the time to tame you. In the golden complete body of Kinsusanu, Dustless said as he looked down at the Jubi below, and his eyes flashed with a fiery color of possession. In the face of such a great temptation, no one can be indifferent, and Dustless is no exception. Becoming the Jubi's Jinchuriki means to take everything from him. If I don't teach you a lesson, I'm afraid you won't give up. Staring at the hysterical Jubi, Dustless's face outlined an evil charming smile, and with a slight thought, the complete body Susanoo containing the Senjutsu also began to move like a thunderbolt. Countless golden particles swarmed and gathered in the palm of Kinsusanu, and the dazzling brilliance shrouded the entire body of the Jubi. Obito saw this and was about to take the Jubi back into his body, but the golden particles all over the sky tilted down, and the cold sound resounded through the sky. Whether it was the number or the scale, it was much larger than the Yasakani no Magatama. Senjutsu a Kinsusanu Yasakani no Magatama. The golden afterglow tilted down, almost filling the entire void, and the whole world turned golden in an instant, and the vast earth was the target of this golden light. Go. Obito's face twitched fiercely, and the void in front of his chest splashed a faint ripple, slowly expanding and extending, and swallowing his whole body into a different space. Only the Jubi was left alone, suffering from the destruction, and became the target of oppression. Anyway, Obito has already controlled the Jubi, and especially the Jubi's immortal body. Any injury can be repaired. But Obito can't, so naturally he has to find a place to take refuge. Pucci? In just a few minutes, the Jubi was like a fish on a chopping board. It was completely nailed and couldn't run away. It was attacked by the golden light bullets and its huge body became a live target. It was covered in bruises and it was a horrible sight to behold. However, in the blink of an eye, the Jubi's powerful recovery ability repaired it again. Oh, woo woo woo, but even so the Jubi wailed in pain. Injuries could be healed, but the piercing pain of being sliced into thousands of pieces couldn't be eliminated. The mental blow was unparalleled. Chapter 362. All living creatures can feel pain. The Jubi was brutally cut into pieces by Dustless. No matter how strong the body's recovery ability was, it still felt a piercing pain. Ao. In the end, a strong energy wave erupted. The Jubi tried to blow away the light bullets with all its strength, but it did achieve an unexpected result. The vibration that contained chakra annihilated many of the light bullets. Seeing this, the Jubi raised its huge mouth full of fangs again. It seemed to be looking at Dustless proudly. The strange sound of the dense fangs biting together made people shudder. However, the Jubi did not have long to feel proud. A golden light whistled down and cruelly suppressed it again. Its thorny back had a long and narrow crimson mark. Looking up, it was the tachi of light in the hands of the complete form Kinsusanu. It was obviously stained with a blood-like liquid. It's too early to be complacent. Dustless in the complete form Kinsusanu said indifferently. He withdrew the long sword from its sheath and silently watched Obito, who once again appeared through the void. His face was full of ridicule and disdain. Not long after, the crimson blood stains of the Jubi healed again. It was not difficult to see how abnormal its recovery ability was. It's fine as long as you obediently stay in the different space. I didn't expect you to come out so recklessly. Looking at Obito indifferently, Dustless's expression changed quietly. The world in his eyes was completely looking at Obito as if he was looking at a dead man. Ao. It seemed to be aware that Dustless treated it like air. The Jubi, who was not calm, immediately looked up to the sky in grief. At the same time, a huge dark energy ball condensed in its mouth. Divine art, bright God gate. Above the void, red circular trees raged down. The number was dense like raindrops. Looking up, it almost covered the entire sky. Wood style was the natural enemy of tailed beasts, and the Jubi was no exception. Boom boom boom, the slow and clumsy Jubi became the target of the red divine trees. It was suppressed and could not move. The Baijidama in its mouth also broke. Bang bang bang. Naturally, the Jubi was not willing to be restrained like this. It struggled with all its might, and the majestic chakra broke out of its body. 10 strong and powerful tails hammered the ground as if venting its anger. Ka. The power of the tailed beast was unfathomable, and the power of the 10 tails was even more so. The ravaged ground burst open, and the long and narrow cracks swallowed the ground, extending into the distance without limit. In just a few breaths of time, a bottomless pit had formed on the ground. The The Jubi also inevitably fell into it. I've spun a cocoon around myself. With a sneer, Dustless stood indifferently and stared at the Jubi that had fallen into the pit expressionlessly. Sure enough, the pure state of the Ten Tails is not easy to control, and it can't concentrate its power. It's just like a beast without consciousness, relying on its instincts to attack the target. Staring at Dustless, Obito secretly thought. The Jubi's previous attack could be said to be extremely awe-inspiring, but it was also due to the wild state of self-venting as it wished, without any active conscious control. In that case, let me become the second Jubi's Jinchuriki after the 6 paths Sennin. Obito's breath tightened, and his Rinnegan swayed with strong ripples, and his whole body seemed to have turned into a bottomless universe black hole in an instant. 6 paths Jubi seal. As Obito's roar fell, the Jubi's movements suddenly stiffened, and then a burst of white smoke rose from the Jubi's body. The huge Jubi disappeared out of thin air, and Uchiha Obito underwent an amazing change. His skin turned pale and 9 black spheres floated behind him. He held a dark staff in his hand, and there were several black tomo on his chest. Compared to the previous Jubi's aura, it was obviously quiet now, and the aura was restrained, and there was no abnormality at all. However, if one perceives it carefully, they will notice that the oppression from Obito's whole body is much more terrifying than the previous wild state of the Jubi. After all, the Jubi is a pure beast that only knows how to vent its anger. It acts according to its instincts. Becoming a Jinchuriki means that the unconscious Jubi will become conscious, and his consciousness is equivalent to the current Obito. Is this the Jubi's Jinchuriki? Dustless's pupils narrowed, and at the same time, the corner of his mouth raised a sinister smile. The state of the Jubi can be divided into 4 states, and the previous state is just the most primitive state. Even in the first state, the strength of the Jubi is earth-shattering, and now Obito is so eager to devour the Jubi, he will inevitably suffer a backlash. It is also the best time for Dustless to recapture the Jubi. Bastard. As if to confirm Dustless's conjecture, Obito, who had swallowed the Jubi, screamed in pain with a splitting headache, and the quiet power in his body began to go crazy, and the rich chakra spread like the autumn wind sweeping the fallen leaves. Obito's eyes turned scarlet, and his eyes were filled with dense blood like a spider web. He was gasping for breath, and his face was pale, and he looked desperate. Why struggle like this? It's better to let go of hell and meet Rin Noera, and I will help you, Obito. With a gloomy smile, Dustless's eyes were particularly strange, and the faint voice seemed to be full of endless magic, making Obito's movements stiff. His consciousness was devoured by the Jubi, and he once again recovered and looked at Dustless blankly. Don't you want to know how Rin Noera died? I will tell you the truth of the matter. The person behind the scenes who manipulated Rin Nohara's death is actually me. Chapter 363. Obito strongly suppressed the throbbing in his heart and tried to maintain the rationality in his mind. He stared at Dustless's strange eyes, and his heart suddenly thumped. Could it be? In his mind he suddenly remembered the life and death process of Rin Noera that day. Obito's heart was in his throat, his eyes were locked on Dustless's strange smile. Don't show such a surprised and fierce expression. Dustless couldn't stand Obito's fierce eyes. He shrugged frivolously and said in a casual tone, "You and Rin Noera are the same, but both are chess pieces that I controlled back then. Even if Obito has now become the Jubi's Jinchuriki, his nature as a chess piece has not changed, but Madara wanted to use this to suppress Dustless in the past. Rin Nohara's death was indeed caused by me." With a dark and strange smile, Dustless admitted it bluntly. He has been annoyed by Obito for so many years. If he can use the mouth to kill him, this is the result that Dustless would like to see. Sure enough, it's you. I will definitely tear you to pieces. Hearing this, Obito's eyes instantly turned scarlet. He gasped like an ox. His eyes were staring at Dustless. His killing intent was surging, especially when talking about Rin Nohara's life and death. Dustless's disdainful tone deeply stimulated him. Of course, this is also the result of Dustless's intention. This kid is now being swallowed by the Jubi. Maybe he will really become the Jubi's nourishment. At the beginning, I used my dojutsu to cause the tragedy of her death. All of this is the reason why you opened your Mangekyo. I spent a lot of effort for this. You should be grateful to me, Obito. Spreading his arms, Dustless smiled disdainfully. Do you think it's helping you today? I'm telling you very clearly, everything you have today is given to you by me. You becoming the Jubi's Jinchuriki is also within my expectations. A calm and powerful voice resounded through the sky. Dustless mocked Obito coldly. He has a kind of disgust and hatred from the depths of his soul for Obito's arrogance over the years. This kid is obviously just a chess piece, but his expression of knowing everything made Dustless extremely uncomfortable, and he took this opportunity to vent his resentment. Although I don't know what happened, a scum like you should die early. A voice containing endless anger suddenly came, accompanied by a dazzling golden light. Looking up, it was Uzumaki Naruto falling from the sky. You don't know death. Seeing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with gloomy killing intent. At the same time, the Rinnegan Sharingan in his left eye rippled. The focus of his sight was the mid-air where Uzumaki Naruto was falling. A violent roar accompanied by a strong repulsion resounded through the sky. Mahabharata. Boom. Without warning, the strange repulsive force burst out, and Naruto, who was holding the golden Rasengan, was swallowed by the airwave and was easily thrown out like a dead dog. However, this kid's vitality was strong, or his will was strong. In just a few breaths he stood up again shakily. Although he gave people a feeling of fragility, he was unusually strong. His eyes were locked on Dustless, and there was no fear in his eyes. Good eyesight, worthy of Minato's son, you can survive the frontal attack of Mahabharata. Seeing this, Dustless nodded with a smile. The principle of Mahabharata was very simple. It was just to throw a repulsive force equivalent to Super Shinra Tensei into any place at will. There was no way to defend against it, and one could only be beaten passively. Naruto, this kid, was attacked by Super Shinra Tensei, but he could still stand up, which really impressed Dustless. Whoosh! The sound of air breaking came from the front. Looking up, he saw a black arrow whistling toward him. Amaterasu. Frowning slightly, Dustless could see the essence of the black arrow at a glance. It was completely controlled by Amaterasu. The power of the arrow was self-evident. The moment it touched the arrow, it would turn into ashes. This is your choice, Sasuke. I was going to let you live for the sake of my brother, but it seems that you chose the direction of hell. Several green beads behind him floated in front of him, and a strong hurricane roared out. Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. A strong hurricane came out from Dustless's hand, and the unparalleled wind directly covered the black arrow, like a stone thrown into the sea, without the slightest ripple. It was completely eliminated. Suddenly, the purple evil light reflected in Dustless's pupils. Looking up, a purple giant with a height of 100 meters appeared out of thin air in front of him, wearing heavy armor and a ferocious Tengu helmet. Fragile. Both of them were Kinsusanoo perfect form, so it stands to reason that they should be about the same height. But Dustless looked at Uchiha Sasuke with a condescending gaze. Killing you will only take a blink of an eye, Sasuke. You will regret for stepping out of the gates of hell. His pupils suddenly widened, and the evil eye began to rage. Dustless's mouth raised a ferocious smile. Kinsusanoo once again unsheathed his katana of light, and the monstrous rainbow shrouded the earth, and the destructive slash whistled out. Boom! The golden slash came head-on, and Sasuke's face was pale. The terrifying light was almost impossible to resist, and even Kinsusanoo perfect form would disintegrate instantly. After thinking for a while, Sasuke also chose to draw his sword to meet the enemy. Whoosh! The same huge purple slash whistled out, pulling a long and narrow gully on the ground, destroying the earth, and the invincible katana of light pierced through everything. However, what made everyone's eyes drop was that when the two slashes collided, the golden luster swallowed the purple light in a destructive manner, and went straight to the sluggish Sasuke. It was almost an overwhelming gesture that instantly killed Sasuke's slash. Chapter 364. The strength of Dustless and Sasuke is very different. The height of Kinsusanoo perfect form explains everything. The two's eye power is completely different. After integrating Itachi's Mangekyo, your eye power is not worth mentioning. It's a waste of Itachi's eyes. Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan's eye power is not as good as mine, not to mention I also have Tensigan and Rinnegan Sharingan. Dustless in Kinsusanoo perfect form shook his head and quietly looked at Sasuke, who was about to be swallowed by the chop. The gap between the two sides is too big. Even with Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan, Sasuke's eye power is still not as good as Dustless's. Kacha. The golden luster passed through Kinsusanoo directly. With the sound of the explosion, Kinsusanoo, who claimed to have stepped into the realm of God, collapsed and was annihilated in an instant. Under absolute power, it was so vulnerable. Fortunately, Sasuke also had foresight. At the critical moment, he decisively abandoned Kinsusanoo perfect form and avoided the fatal chop. Looking up, the 100-meter-tall giant chakra fell to the ground alone. The chakra in its hand was killed mercilessly before it could be sheathed. Its scarlet eyes shot a look of unwillingness, and it tried its best to heal the two halves of its body. Stubborn resistance. Wu Chen's indifferent pupils emitted a vicious aura, and said with killing intent. At the same time, Susanu's hand once again fell, and an awe-inspiring slash once again cut through the sky. Susanu, who fell to the ground, was annihilated and turned into dust. This guy. Wu Chen's cold eyes made everyone's spirits rise. They felt a chill all over their bodies. In the face of such a peerless god of death, only the dead and the legendary god could remain calm. Uzumaki Naruto. Susanu, which was 500 or 600 meters tall, covered the sky and the earth, and the golden evil brilliance sprinkled over the earth like the sun, covering the sky and the sun, making everyone's heart fall to the bottom. Looking at the height of nearly 200 meters, no matter who it was, they couldn't resist. Dustless's cold eyes stared at Naruto, who refused to give up. He sneered and said, "From the beginning, I hated your savior mentality. You always think that others are wrong and you are right. You deny everything about others. This is very similar to Minato. How boring. You're just a clown living in my script. How dare you talk about your dreams so shamelessly? I don't remember giving you the right to do that." Looking down at Obito, Naruto and Sasuke, Dustless's cold tone. "No one is a clown in your script, no is a puppet in your script. Is it, teacher?" In a trance, Obito saw the shadow of Namikaze's Minato from Naruto's body. His heart rippled and his eyes changed dramatically. The thoughts in his mind became firmer. "Traitor, you are indeed a useless piece of trash. Choosing you was a mistake." Dustless's eyes were filled with killing intent as he said coldly. Obito's expression changed and he naturally saw it. Susanoo light gathered, and the dazzling light covered the entire earth. "Now I'm going to clean up the sect." The diamond sword in Susanoo's hand became even more dazzling. The dazzling light was like the sun, making people unable to open their eyes. The dense destructive power that filled it made people feel powerless. Yasukani no Magatama. The flash whizzed out and turned into a luster that roared down. The number was overwhelming. Even an Iron Man like Naruto was stunned for a while and he was desperate. "Both of you come over here quickly." Seeing this, Obito quickly shouted and controlled the 9 Magatama behind him to form a black defensive wall to resist the erosion of the light bullets. Sasuke and Naruto looked at each other and ran to Obito's side. Whoosh! The light bullets fell mercilessly from the sky. The black barrier as thin as a cicada's wing covered the void. Its thickness was about the same as an ordinary leaf. Only God knows if it could withstand it. Don't worry, this defensive barrier is condensed by truth-seeking ball. It's fundamentally different from ordinary defensive barriers. Seeing both Naruto and Sasuke frowning with a worried look, Obito calmly explained. The enchantment formed by the truth-seeking ball is definitely the strongest. Boom. Boom. Obito's conjecture was also confirmed. The rainstorm-like golden light bullets all smashed on the defensive barrier, but they couldn't break it. Sasuke and Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. "I have something to entrust you. Entrust? The power of Bijou? You still have such an unrealistic and ridiculous idea in front of me, Obito." Behind Obito, shining photons came from all directions and condensed into Dustless's body. His eyes were cold and he directly threw out a black iron rod. Whoosh. Hearing the sharp sound coming, Obito didn't dodge, and the truth-seeking ball behind him once again turned into a circular defensive barrier. Clang. Sparks flashed in the air, and the black iron rod that Dustless threw out was distorted and turned into useless scrap iron falling to the ground. "It seems that becoming Jubi's Jinchuriki has made you a lot more confident." Seeing this, Dustless's pupils rippled. Looking at Obito's back, he said calmly. At the same time, golden light rose from his body again and he disappeared. Lightspeed kick. Boom. Dustless's speed was too fast. Obito didn't have time to open his truth-seeking ball defense. He felt that his chest was attacked by a tyrannical and unparalleled force, and all the organs in his lungs were displaced. If he wasn't Jubi's Jinchuriki, I'm afraid that this casual kick would have won the battle. Even if he didn't die, Obito was still sent flying with a kick, and it seemed like he was completely crushed. Sasuke and Naruto, who didn't realize what happened, became lambs to the slaughter. Chapter 365. Obito was kicked on the spot without any power to fight back. Only Sasuke and Naruto were left in the same place. Sasuke looked at Uzumaki Naruto with his eagle-like eyes. He hated this little fox. Denying everything about others, always thinking that he is right, such a conceited person, no one will like him. The light gathered in his palm, and the golden long sword jumped with a sharp cold light. His eyes were filled with killing intent, and the sharp lightsaber was enough to cut a meteorite. Pucci. A scarlet bloodstain appeared in mid-air, and the stinging pain spread all over his body. Uzumaki Naruto instinctively stepped back and subconsciously touched his face full of wounds. There was a scorched wound on his face. Oh, your reaction is quite fast. Looking at Uzumaki Naruto with a smile, Dustless's face was full of ridicule, and he mocked. It seems that after living with that fox for a long time, your survival habits have become like a human. Such a sensitive reaction ability should be classified as a beast. As if it was intentional, the sword wound on Naruto's right face was particularly conspicuous. Naruto, be careful of this guy, his strength is not in the same dimension as ours. Appearing beside Naruto in a flash, Sasuke cautiously said. At the same time, he didn't forget to guard against Dustless. When he attacked Naruto just now, he didn't even see the moment he raised his sword. All the movements were smooth and fleeting. When he realized it, it was already too late. If it weren't for Naruto's quick nerves, he might have died. I'll pay attention. Nodding heavily, Naruto's cross-eyed eyes were filled with depression. Sasuke didn't see Dustless make a move, and he was no exception. He felt the unprecedented danger and just instinctively stepped back. It was the first time he encountered such a terrifying enemy in his life. He's coming. Noticing Dustless's sudden disappearance, Sasuke suddenly screamed. Naruto, who was thinking quickly, also recovered. When he looked up, Dustless was already in front of him. The golden flash roared down, and the sharp golden light was about to split Uzumaki Naruto in two. Kacha. Purple chakra suddenly rushed out and turned into a hard shield to resist Dustless's attack. The evil aura enveloped Sasuke and Naruto. Despite this, the purple chakra still had clear cracks. Kinsusanu again. Dustless's eyes burst with cold light and his fingertips straightened. The white golden luster gathered on his fingertips, and after a moment he shot it with a cold face. Wuxia is not a good person. The road is chosen by oneself. If Sasuke leaves wisely and stays away from the smoke, Wuxia doesn't mind letting him go. Anyway, it doesn't matter if Sasuke dies or not. However, Sasuke now chose to enter the path of heaven. Naturally, Wuxia incarnated as God to take his life. Whoosh! The light gathered on his fingertips shot out. It was cold and ruthless, containing Dustless's monstrous killing intent. It easily penetrated Sasuke's abdomen. The bloody hole was clearly visible, and the smell of burnt meat floated in the air. Through Sasuke's abdomen, the world on the other side could be seen. You can still stand, your perseverance can't be underestimated. Seeing Sasuke struggling with a bloody hole in his abdomen, like a javelin supporting his body, Dustless's calm eyes rippled. Then he just sneered, and the huge beam roared out again. Pucci. It directly opened a bigger wound on his chest and occupied Sasuke's body. Looking at the big hole in his abdomen, Sasuke's pupils were gray and dim, and his face was pale, like a candle in the wind, dancing with the flowing wind. He could clearly perceive that his vitality was accelerating. Whoosh! Countless beams were thrown out, and the gorgeous light swallowed Sasuke's whole body. Only people with excellent dynamic ability could see that Sasuke's body was covered with dense burn holes, and it was horrible to look at. About a few breaths of time passed, the erosion of the light was over, revealing the ravaged body. Sasuke's whole body was burned, his face was unrecognizable, his breathing was stagnant, his heart stopped beating forever, and his gray eyes fell to the ground with unwillingness. Although your life aura no longer exists, in order to prevent some melodramatic resurrection event, I will be relieved if you disappear with your bones. Dustless, who planned to turn around and leave, suddenly remembered that for some reason, Sasuke finally met the old monster Rikudo Sannin in the spiritual world, and accepted his inheritance, obtained the power of Rikudo, and opened the legendary Six-Tomo Rinnegan. Dustless's fingertips burned with black flames, and he looked indifferently at Sasuke's burned body. He chose to directly destroy the body. Bastard, go and be buried with Sasuke. Seeing his friend was cut open by Dustless, Naruto's eyes were wide open. The energy ball containing nature's chakra in his hand hit Dustless's back with all his strength. Idiot. Dustless turned his head and glanced at Naruto casually. At the same time, his body swayed with an irresistible repulsion force, and Uzumaki Naruto was thrown out together with the Rasengan in his hand. A huge pit was smashed on the ground, and Uzumaki Naruto was lying in it half dead, half conscious. Kid with a strong vitality. Feeling that Naruto was still weak, Dustless couldn't help but be moved by the vitality of the Uzumaki clan. Whether it was Nagato or Naruto, their vitality was extremely strong. Serves you right. With a thick sneer on his face, Dustless changed his face faster than flipping a book. Perhaps it was because of the unique chakra and the majestic vitality that it was the first choice to seal the bijou. Don't worry, after killing Sasuke, I will extract your bijou, and then send you two to the underworld to continue your fate. Chapter 366. The Rinnegan surged with ripples, and Madara stared helplessly at the figure in front of him, and a sense of frustration rose in his heart. This mysterious woman named Yuluo's strength is almost the same as mine. If it weren't for the Edo Tensei, I'm afraid I would be full of holes. The golden beam hit him head-on, and Madara's body was disintegrated into 8 pieces. In just a short time his body was healed again. This is the biggest advantage of the Edo Tensei. As long as he is not attacked by the yin-yang release, he can recover without limit. During the fight, his body was blown up countless times, but he didn't take any advantage. Yuluo's strange pattern was something he had never seen before, and he could only rely on the advantage of the Edo Tensei to test it. Fortunately, after his body was blown up countless times, he finally had some understanding of the strange pattern in front of him. This woman is too strong, and it's impossible to defeat her in a short time. After some testing, Madara also came to this cruel fact. He had enough confidence to defeat Yuluo, but the time needed to be extended indefinitely. It could be 1 day, 2 days, or even longer. If you have any unrealistic ideas, I advise you to stop before you go too far. A cold voice came from the front, pulling Madara's thoughts back. Yuluo said sternly, "My Tenseigan is not weaker than your Rinnegan. The Tenseigan and the Rinnegan are of the same level. Perhaps the sealing aspect is not as good as the Rinnegan, but the pure physical attack is absolutely unparalleled. It's even better than the Rinnegan. The Tenseigan is indeed not inferior to the Rinnegan." Hearing this, Madara nodded seriously. From the battle just now, he has learned that the Tenseigan is the dojutsu inherited from Himura, the younger brother of the Rikudo Sennin. There is no reason for it to be weaker than the Rinnegan. Well, Obito has become the Jubi's Jinchuriki. Why deceive yourself? Maybe if you become the Jubi's Jinchuriki, you can suppress Dustless and Uchiha Obito. Compared to my man, he's 1,000 miles behind. Yuluo smiled. Her soft smile was like the warm sunshine in March. She has 100% confidence in Dustless. Even if Obito becomes the Jinchuriki of the Jubi, the strength he can exert is not to be underestimated. Useless trash. Uchiha Madara's eyes flashed with fire. Indeed, as Yuluo said, he observed Black Zetsu in the dark and knew that Obito was at a disadvantage. As a Jinchuriki of the Jubi, he was beaten up by Dustless. It's really inexcusable. Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto were also beaten without any power to fight back. Sasuke was burned to ashes by Amaterasu, and Naruto was in a half-dead state. What made Madara feel the most powerless was that even if he went to support Obito, according to Dustless's current strength, he might be cruelly abused. Madara-sama, the situation is critical. That kid Obito was beaten by Uchiha Dustless without any power to fight back. In his mind, Black Zetsu's anxious voice sounded. His hoarse tone was filled with endless anger. He cursed Obito for being useless. As the Jinchuriki of Jubi, he was defeated by Dustless. It was not justifiable from all sides. Even if it's because Dustless is too abnormal. Shut up, Black Zetsu, don't communicate with me without my permission. With a murderous tone, Madara warned. Black Zetsu was anxious, but he was more anxious than Black Zetsu. Once Dustless captures the Jubi, it means that he may become the new Jinchuriki of the Jubi. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel a sense of regret. If he had listened to Black Jew's advice and killed Dustless directly, he wouldn't have been in such a terrible situation today. Everything was self-inflicted. If he didn't value Dustless's strength and wanted to use him, he wouldn't be like this. But having said that, it's impossible for him to admit his mistake in front of Black Zetsu's consciousness. Now Dustless is unstoppable. When he becomes the Jubi's Jinchuriki, he will be even more invincible. Wherever his sword points, everything will be destroyed. Damn you, Uchiha Madara. Seeing Madara so arrogantly scolding him, Black Zetsu's heart also became angry. Although he is now Madara's dog, Madara didn't dare to directly scold him before. Black Zetsu is also the will of Otsutsuki Kagaya. His identity is noble. Being ordered around by Madara, a grassroot, can't help but feel angry. Although he is unhappy, he still has to continue being a grandson. Although the battle with her made my blood boil, the current situation is dangerous. Only I can deal with Uchiha Dustless personally, and become a new Jinchuriki can compete with him. Madara's eyes flashed and he secretly said coldly, no matter what the final development is, he must go and grab the Jubi to become the third Jinchuriki. Wanna run away? Catching the intention of retreat in Madara's eyes, Yuluo's body shone brightly, and a bright beam of light mercilessly cut towards Madara. Run away. What a joke, your strength is almost the same as mine, but I am the Edo Tensei, this is my advantage. Hearing this, Madara sneered again and again. Although Yuluo can use Yin-Yang release, he can also use it. In the end, Yuluo doesn't have much advantage. Ignoring the beam of light, Madara's pupils widened, and the mysterious black ripples spread out. He stared at Yuluo's position and opened his mouth to say his trump card. Wheel grave, border prison. Boom. A strong repulsive force burst out, and even though Yuluo was prepared for the wheel grave, border prison, her body was still affected by the shock wave and bounced out. Seeing this, Madara also seized the opportunity, and his body quickly rushed towards the place where Uchiha Wuchen and Obito were fighting, leaving only the shadow summoned from the tomb of Luin to deal with Uchiha Luo. Chapter 367. Uchiha Madara's anxiousness is understandable. After Wuchen got the Jubi, the only person who can suppress him is the legendary god. Even if Rikudo Sannin is perfectly resurrected, whether he can defeat Dustless is still a question mark. Obito, that useless trash. Black Zetsu couldn't help but curse Obito again. As the third son of Kagaya, he was ruthlessly reprimanded by Uchiha Madara, who was almost 1,000 years younger than him. If Obito can deal with Dustless, Black Zetsu won't have to endure Madara's anger. Inevitably, Black Zetsu blamed all of this on Obito. It's over, Uzumaki Naruto. Indifferently observing the fainted Naruto, Dustless's eyes flashed with naked disdain. He waved his hand and Chakra's energy wave hit Naruto's clothes. On his chest, a unique black vortex seal was revealed. It was the Bagua seal used to seal Kyuubi. The half-dead Naruto struggled to open his eyes and looked at the indifferent Dustless in a trance. He tried his best to speak, but due to the severe physical exhaustion, he couldn't open his mouth again after saying a word, and he fainted. He could only let Dustless move. Naruto could clearly feel that some special and strange energy wave was absorbing Kyuubi's yang attribute in his body. About half an hour later, Kyuubi's chakra was extracted. The golden monster with 9 tails was in the sky, casually raging chakra, staring at Dustless fiercely. The blood-red eyes glared at Dustless, and a monstrous hatred and blood smell came from it. If eyes could kill, Dustless would be a human stick at this moment. I'm the benefactor who liberated you from his body. Not only are you not grateful, but you hate me. Pointing at Naruto, who stopped breathing, Dustless looked at Kyuubi hopelessly. His eyes were abnormally magnanimous and righteous, as if he should kneel down and thank him. Seeing this, Kyuubi grimaced and snorted. Too lazy to waste his breath, he gathered a dark energy ball in his mouth. Go to hell with your ambition. The Baijidama grew bigger and bigger. In just a few breaths of time, the energy ball as big as a mountain filled the entire sky. The power contained within it could easily crush several mountains. Not to mention facing it head-on, even the slightest energy fluctuation would be blown away by the wind. Humans and beasts really cannot communicate. Dustless stared fearlessly at the Baijidama that was getting bigger and bigger. The corner of his mouth slightly raised, revealing a contemptuous smile. The attack style of the tailed beast was extremely monotonous. Other than the Baijidama, it was direct physical combat. The other aspects of resistance were not worthy of compliments. This also meant that they were destined to be slaughtered by others. So, the Baijidama reached its limit, and a blade-like hurricane swept up. If one came into contact with it, they would be sliced into pieces. Although it was ferocious, Dustless directly ignored it. Whoosh! The sound of breaking air resounded, and various substances in the air began to be annihilated and collapsed. Looking from afar, the huge Baijidama was coming head-on, rolling up a fierce storm, and drawing a long and narrow trench on the ground. Dustless's eyes were filled with nothing but the huge Baijidama. The Baijidama with Kyuubi's resentment was extraordinary, it could drag the whole world down with it. Genjutsu is ineffective against me, physical attacks are also ineffective against me. With a light smile, Dustless stood with his hands behind his back and closed his eyes indifferently. The Bijadama passed through his body and swept straight behind him. Boom boom boom, the atmosphere was dull for a long time. The Bijadama was sublimated, setting off an unprecedented explosion. The range of the explosion was vast and infinite, but it still couldn't affect Dustless. Pung pung pung. The earth shook violently in a regular pattern, strong and tyrannical power raged, the flowing air around him was filled with a faint dry heat. Slightly frowning, Dustless opened his eyes again, and what he saw was the orange monster that jumped into the air. Its developed muscles were tightly stretched, and its sharp claws were surrounded by a cold light that penetrated through all things in the world. It was about to separate Dustless's head from his body. Seeing this, Dustless just smiled, and then a ripple of energy floated out from the Rinnegan Sharingan. The invincible attack of Kyuubi suddenly stiffened, and in a flash, it was full of flaws. It seemed that some special power delayed the movement of Kyuubi, and the eyes full of hatred also underwent an amazing change. The scarlet eyes turned into circles of Rinnegan. Dustless just casually glanced at Kyuubi and controlled it. Although I'm not very good at genjutsu, you rushed over so carelessly. You're a good target, Kyuubi. Regardless of whether Kyuubi could hear him or not, Dustless was just talking to himself. When he practiced with Sasuke in the system, Dustless took everything from Sasuke. Sasuke, who was gifted by Rikudo Sannin, opened the 6-Tomo Rinnegan. In addition to the Heavenly Hand Power Genjutsu, there was also Genjutsu unique to Rinnegan. Dustless, who defeated Sasuke in the system, took everything from him, and naturally he also knew the Heavenly Hand Power, and the mysterious but powerful Genjutsu. On the other hand, Nine-Tailed, who had been so arrogant just a moment ago, was now lying on the ground obediently. The murderous aura around his body had also been retracted. His 9 tails gently slapped the ground, splashing up some dust. The 9-tailed beast in front of him gave off an absurd feeling as if it was possessed. It seemed to be begging for mercy from Dustless. I said before that I'll send you and Sasuke to meet in the underworld, and now I'll fulfill both of your wishes. Looking back at Uzumaki Naruto, Dustless said seriously. Naruto, who extracted the bijou, will definitely die, but for safety reasons, it's better to destroy the corpse. A black light suddenly flashed on Naruto's body, swallowing every inch of his skin. Chapter 368. Boom boom boom. Chakra boiled and surged, the invisible air waves repelled out, and the soil covering the body immediately turned into countless particles. In the deep pit, a pale body was exposed. Worthy of the Jubi's Jinchuriki, it's really a tough guy. Looking at the pale figure, Dustless said with a little helplessness and admiration. This is the Jubi's Jinchuriki, no matter what kind of injury it receives, it will recover. Even fatal injuries to normal humans will be healed in an instant. There is only one way to deal with the Jubi's Jinchuriki, and it's the only way Dustless knows. The only way is to extract the Jubi from Obito's body, there is no other way. The chakra of the two brats seems to have disappeared, it seems that they have been killed. The majestic perception spread out, taking in the wind and grass around him. Obito muttered to himself and his heart fell to the bottom. He originally hoped that Sasuke and Naruto could help contain Dustless, but now it seems that the idea was aborted. The two were slaughtered by Dustless without leaving their bodies. Their end was extremely miserable. Whoosh! A dazzling luster suddenly flashed, and when he looked up, a beam of light as thick as a thumb hit his face. Insignificant skill. Obito didn't dodge, holding the six-path monk staff in his hand, and a black defensive wall flashed out of thin air, as thin as a cicada's wing, but it gave an unshakable feeling. Clang! The defensive wall swept up a faint spark, and the golden light couldn't erode and penetrate it, leaving only a slight burn mark, easily blocking the golden light. Not simple, your control of the truth-seeking ball is obviously on a higher level. Dustless slightly nodded, and golden light condensed on his fingers again. The 5 fingers were decorated with gorgeous brilliance, as bright as stars, and he casually flicked his fingers. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The light that shot out from his fingertips exploded like a heavenly maiden scattering flowers, turning into raindrops that rushed towards Obito in an endless stream. Wheel grave, border prison. There was a ripple in the void, and the wave-like air waves swallowed everything around, and the light bullets in the sky were swallowed and scattered before they played the prelude to the destruction of the sun. Eyebrows slightly raised, Dustless's eyes swept to the northern sky, and a tiny black dot came into his eyes. It was Uchiha Madara. With Rinnegan, Madara's speed was naturally extremely fast, and after a while his whole body hit the ground like a meteorite, splashing countless gravel. The ground where he landed also collapsed, revealing a large crater. Uchiha Madara held his hands in front of him and looked at Obito with indifferent eyes. He looked down at the incompetent Jinchuriki with a contemptuous attitude. Jinchuriki as the Jubi's Jinchuriki. This bee is really good, bold and stylish enough. Seeing Madara's domineering appearance, his invincible aura shrouded everyone's heart. Wu Chen secretly gave a thumbs up to Madara, and then a subtle sarcastic smile appeared on his face. The unparalleled aura seemed to be a silent declaration of Madara's high-profile entrance. Let's put aside the grievances between you and me for the time being, let's clean him up first. Looking at Madara casually, Obito said with confidence. His eyes flashed with ambition. Madara's Rinnegan and the Jubi were now his, and his identity as a pawn was not suitable for him. As you wish. Although he was not happy with Obito's arrogant tone, Madara also restrained his dissatisfaction. After killing Dustless, his biggest and strongest enemy, it would not be too late to talk about the ownership of the Jubi. Dustless is immune to physical attacks. I will hold him for a while and you can release that technique. Looking deeply at Obito, Madara faintly said, and immediately stared at Dustless, ready to fight. The ground under his feet suddenly burst open, and thick arms formed by green bushes grabbed Madara's legs, and the strength was raised to the limit, and fiercely tore in different directions. Puchi. Caught off guard, Madara's Edo Tensei was directly torn in half, thrown away like garbage and then pounced on Obito in the same way. However, the same trick obviously did not play the same effect. Looking contemptuously at the attacking Mukugan, Obito waved his hand, and a black defensive wall surrounded him. The sticky Mukugan directly collapsed and decayed. He is not a fish in a pond, and if you underestimate him, you will end up like this. Glancing indifferently at the restored body of Madara, Obito seriously explained. This is the result of underestimating Dustless. Well, I'm just testing how much he has improved over the years. With a snort, Madara brushed the dust off his body. He was cunning and naturally heard Obito's sarcasm, and he also chose to look at him coldly. So, did you test the strength of this guy? Turning his head and glancing at Madara, Obito calmly asked. Of course I tested his strength. Although I don't want to admit it, but now he is not inferior to the former Hagoromo. His eyes gloomy, Madara clenched his fist and said in a hoarse and low voice, I can only use that technique, otherwise you and I will definitely not last long. After that, Madara rushed out, and with a ferocious face, he rushed toward Dustless. I also want to see how different you are from the only one who opened the Rinnegan in a millennium. Oh, oh. Boom! Light gathered in his hand and Dustless fought with Madara. The roar of the sword's collision resounded, and each time, it was accompanied by violent fluctuations of energy. Even the simplest confrontation of taijutsu caused the mountains to collapse and the earth to crack. Suddenly, the earth suddenly trembled, and the thick green trees pierced the sky, and the huge mysterious bud at the top was clearly visible. Chapter 369. The thick green tree extended without limit and turned into an unprecedented tree demon. In the blink of an eye, it reached a height of hundreds of meters. Dustless's complete body Kinsusanu was not worth mentioning compared to this tree. Boom! Dustless couldn't help but choke. Although he had imagined the true appearance of the tree countless times in his mind, he still couldn't help but gasp when he saw such an exaggerated degree. Kagaya just stole the power of the tree. What kind of material the tree was made of is still a mystery. There's no need to show such an incredible look. Madara slightly moved his muscles and bones and there was a crackling sound of bones. He explained at length, the source of chakra is actually the tree of God. The first person who obtained the power of chakra was Kagaya, the mother of the sage of six paths. Besides that, Madara? Seeing Madara open his mouth, Dustless's eyes flashed with a sarcastic smile, and directly interrupted his speech. You think you know everything, playing with the world like a doll. Unfortunately, have you ever thought that you are actually all things in the hands of others? In the final analysis, Madara is just a member of all creatures. Although because of his dream to jump out of the mortal boundary and become the first transcendent in history to open the Rinnegan, he always thinks that he is special. It's ridiculous to think that he is a god sent by God to save the world. In the end, Madara is just an important chess piece in Black Zetsu's conspiracy that covers the world, and it's the most tragic kind. He was almost designed by Black Zetsu all his life. What do you mean by this guy? Madara's eyebrows were slightly raised and his tone was low and cold. He asked very unkindly. He usually preaches others. Now Wuchen turned around and taught him a lesson. He felt more uncomfortable than eating 10 pounds of flies. Ka ka ka. A few hundred meters above the void there was a crisp sound. Looking up, he saw that the green leaves that wrapped the bud were all withered and scattered, revealing the pink bud. For some unknown reason, the flower bud didn't bloom for a long time, and it gave off a weak feeling that it wasn't able to continue its growth. That's the only way. Obito's eyes flashed with murderous intent. A man with a small head is not a man without poison. He naturally understood this simple truth. Living to this day he had seen the darkness and ugliness of the whole world. His palms were clasped together and cold sweat could be seen on his forehead. It was obvious that the technique he was about to release was rather strenuous for him. Ka ka ka. Deep underground at the roots of the divine tree, countless vines surged out in an instant, madly devouring the nutrients in the ground at an unprecedented speed. Everything in the world was devoured by the vines. The ground that came into contact with the vines turned pitch black after being devoured, and the humans that came into contact with it were directly sucked dry and turned into dried corpses. The scene was horrifying. Perhaps the essence of the tree of God is the highest level of predator. A look of understanding flashed through Dustless's eyes. Perhaps the divine tree was using the entire world as nourishment for its existence. This also explained the nature of its immortality. As long as the heavens and earth were not destroyed, the divine tree would exist forever. It was a predator at the top of the food chain, and the entire world was its target of bullying and plundering. After all, the existence of the divine tree relied on the entire world as nourishment. Sad technique, but it has nothing to do with me. With a sneer, Dustless turned a deaf ear to this bloody scene. The life and death of the people had nothing to do with him. It was already a blessing from the gods that he didn't harm the world. Expecting Dustless to save them was a fantasy. After about the time it takes to burn an incense stick, the huge pink bud of the divine tree finally bloomed, revealing a scarlet eye. The same eye was faintly reflected in the moonlight. What was not flattering was that it was not a 9-tomo Sharingan, but a 6-tomo Sharingan. However, even though it was only a 6-tomo Sharingan, it still retained a soul-stirring fluctuation of eye power. Seeing this, Obito's body also lost the shackles of gravity and slowly flew into the air. Looking at the moon countless thousands of miles away, a look of fanaticism flashed in his eyes. More than 10 years of hard work, nearly 10 years of dreams, finally came true today. Infinite Tsukuyami, no one can resist. No matter how strong a ninja is, they will be pulled into the dream world. You can't escape from that technique. Gritting his teeth and staring at Dustless, Madara said hatefully, because Dustless's sudden rise was his biggest failure, and the biggest stain in his life besides Hashirama. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with a playful look, and his eyes fell on Obito, who flew into the sky, and the Tensigen rippled, and his palm was facing Obito, and the void rippled like water waves and the suction force gushed out. Get down for me. In the void, Obito was pulled by gravity, swaying and swaying, his body instantly lost its center of gravity, and as Dustless increased his strength, he fell from midair. Boom! The ground shattered and a huge pit appeared. Obito's internal organs were dislocated, and his mouth was foaming with blood. If he wasn't the Jubi's Jinchuriki, he would have suffered such a blow. Useless waste, what's the use of you too? Black Zetsu shouted hoarsely, and immediately the space behind him distorted sharply, and a body composed of black liquid drilled into it. The space then healed, and when it reappeared, it was already at Obito's side. Black Zetsu? Staring at the strange behavior of Black Zetsu, whether it was Madara or Obito, they were all puzzled, including Dustless, and they all looked at Black Zetsu inexplicably. Especially Uchiha Madara's killing intent. Black Zetsu was just his will, and he ignored his orders again and acted alone. How could Madara not be angry? Heiju's next move surprised everyone, including Dustless. His face was full of astonishment. Chapter 370. Madara stared at Black Zetsu angrily. Although he has been showing no change in his expression, everything has a bottom line. Black Zetsu, who was created by himself, dared to challenge his bottom line, which has angered Madara. At the same time, he also planned to kill this eyesore after the end of this war. Black Zetsu, this is not a place you can touch, stay away from me. Staring at Black Zetsu with murderous eyes, Madara warned him in a tone that could not be disobeyed. If Black Zetsu dared to disobey, Madara would obliterate him. However, Black Zetsu directly ignored Madara's words, and the next sentence made Madara vomit blood, and his murderous aura began to rage uncontrollably. Your brain is still as stupid as your behavior, Madara? The liquefied Black Zetsu sneered at Madara. His contemptuous eyes seemed to be looking at garbage that was not worth mentioning. His face was full of disappointment, and his tone revealed his disappointment, which directly ignited Madara's anger. Impudent! Who do you think created you? Uchiha Madara roared out like a cannonball. His arms full of explosive power went straight to Black Zetsu, which was composed of black liquid. Stupid! Seeing this, Black Zetsu just sneered, his liquid body surged and a black iron rod shot out. This is yin-yang release? Madara's eyes flashed with horror. He didn't expect that Black Zetsu could use yin-yang release, and this simple and casual appearance showed that he was extremely experienced in controlling it. Although surprised, Madara was also a veteran of many battles, and he also threw out a black iron rod. Clang! Along with the sound of metal clashing, the void splashed with sparks that disappeared in a flash. The two black iron rods were twisted together and curled into an unrecognizable shape like a fried dough twist. You people are just pawns for my mother's resurrection. A group of wastes want to shake the world. Ridiculous. Including you, Uchiha Madara. And dustless Uchiha Madara. The hoarse roar resounded through the sky, and Black Zetsu wantonly played his inner pleasure. Over the years he lived like a grandson under the feet of dustless Madara, Obito and Nagato, and there was a shadow in his heart. The third son of Kagaya lived such a tragic life, which was indeed worthy of sympathy. Black Zetsu is a perfect showman. Whether it's Madara or Obito, they were all fooled by him and he was very happy. Madara's forehead even bulged with blue veins. He subconsciously looked at Dustless. Dustless was looking at him with a smile. That expression was clearly like watching a clown perform. My Madara-sama, haven't you realized it yet? The mother I'm talking about is Kagaya. That is, Otsutsuki Kagaya, the first person to have chakra. The powerful voice spread out and Black Zetsu's tone was proud, with banter and ridicule. At the same time, his eyes were focused on Obito. He looked at him with hawk-like eyes, obviously from the perspective of a hunter. Is it possible that this guy can resurrect Kagaya now? Absurd thoughts suddenly came into his mind, and Dustless couldn't help but take a cold breath, secretly calculating, and suddenly found that it was not impossible. Obito's current state is the same as Madara's. Although he did not release Infinite Tsukuyomi, he did not say that to resurrect Kagaya, he must open Rinnegan Sharingan and release Infinite Tsukuyomi to the world. You are just chess pieces in my script, Madara, since you got the body cells of Senju Hashirama and opened the Rinnegan. No, since the beginning of the Warring States period, you were the hero in my plan. But now it seems that your performance as the hero is also disappointing. It's my fault. Looking at Madara with a sneer, Black Zetsu said, and then said to himself, you don't understand. It doesn't matter whether you understand or not. Anyway, everything will end. You dare to boast with my will, you're looking for death. Rinnegan surged, and the majestic eye power began to rage, focusing on Black Zetsu's location. Madara also recovered his calmness and immediately shouted. Wheel grave, border prison. A strong repulsive force spread out and engulfed everything that came into contact with it. Black Zetsu was no exception. The black body that was made up of liquid was directly torn apart and scattered like ink. Boring. Seeing Black Zetsu's body bursting, Madara sneered again and again. The waste created by him dared to boast, he really didn't know how to live. But before Madara could be proud, the scattered ink gathered again and condensed into Black Zetsu's body again. Idiot, I've already said that my mother is Kagaya Otsutsuki. I'm the embodiment of my mother's will. Kagaya is immortal. Do you think that I, as her consciousness, will be killed by you? A hoarse and harsh voice sounded, and Black Zetsu did not hesitate to attack Madara. Today all the grievances of these years must be vented in one breath. Madara was livid and even his breathing was heavy. The one he trusted turned out to be someone else's spy, and even said that he lived under his design all his life. Madara's killing intent was awe-inspiring. Usually he was the one who calculated others and suffered such a big loss. Even if his mentality was good, he couldn't bear it. However, Dustless has always been calm and his look has never changed. Kagaya herself is the Jubi, and now it's just a wild beast without wisdom. Black Zetsu is the consciousness of Kagaya. After the fusion of the Jubi, it's obvious what will happen. Immortal. Is really desirable. Seeing Black Zetsu's body healed again, Dustless's eyes flashed with a fanatical yearning. Everyone wants to reach the peak of the realm. Chapter 371. After that, Black Zetsu also ignored the existence of Madara and looked at the Jubi's Jinchuriki Obito with strange eyes. Waste, why don't you surrender? Black Zetsu opened his big mouth full of fangs and said fiercely. That look in his eyes showed that he already regarded Obito as his prey. As for Obito's strength, he didn't care about it. Black Zetsu didn't talk nonsense. As the saying goes, things change after a long time. Regardless of Madara and Dustless, he chose to make the first move. His body instantly liquefied and rushed toward Obito like flowing water. I don't care who you are, those who block my ambition, go to hell. Obito snorted and looked at Obito coldly without fear. He held the six-path monk's staff and gently pointed toward the void in front of him, and 9 black balls came out behind him. Truth-seeking ball is a perfect technique, it can attack and defend, and anything that touches it will be annihilated. Futile struggle. You're only using these few techniques. Useless trash. Black Zetsu calmly stared at the truth-seeking ball flying toward him, and his strange eyes flashed with contempt and strangeness. His liquefied body easily drilled into the depths of the ground. I thought you had some means, but it turned out to be just a vase. Seeing Black Zetsu slip away, Obito spread out his majestic perception and took in all the movements within a few kilometers. However, the result that he got shocked him. There was no breath, no trace, as if he disappeared completely out of thin air. This guy is really not as simple as he looks. It seems to be a space ninjutsu that manipulates space, but he is obviously more skilled than Minato and Kakashi. Dustless frowned tightly when he saw this, and his mind became cautious. This strange technique is not so much a space ninjutsu, it is better to say that Black Zetsu at this moment is like the god of space, and he can tear the void according to his will. Even Wuxia was confused by the elusive tracks. Waste, I will take everything from you now, and after waking up Mother, I will return to the world. A hoarse voice came from the void behind Obito. Immediately, he saw that the void behind Obito had been distorted out of shape, and black liquid flowed out from it. The dark arm stretched out, pulsing with a mysterious swallowing light. It was like a black hole in the depths of the universe, capable of swallowing everything. Obito felt a palpitating power. This ugly black arm seemed to want to merge with him. Wheel grave, border prison. An unparalleled repulsion came head-on, and Black Zetsu's liquefied body suddenly broke apart, bursting like raindrops, splashing everywhere. Hey, it's a bunch of naughty brats. As I said before, Kagaya's is immortal, and I'm the incarnation of Mother's Zzzz. The black ink that had burst open condensed and healed once again. A series of strange laughter rang out from within. It was filled with boundless pride, giving people the impression that it was a villain who had achieved success. This guy's strength is not strong, but his ability is quite strange. Looking at the scene in front of him with interest, Wuxia simply chose to be a bystander with an indifferent expression as if it had nothing to do with him. Looking at Black Zetsu, Dustless saw the shadow of Kagaya from his figure. His so-called mother's resurrection is not good for you. Looking at Dustless, Madara warned out of good intentions. The implication was nothing more than hoping to join forces with Dustless to kill Black Zetsu, and then discuss the ownership of the Jubi. Unfortunately, Madara was destined to be disappointed. Dustless just glanced at him casually, and then simply closed his eyes. Madara, Obito, why are you struggling? Our purpose is the same from beginning to end, to pull the whole human race into the infinite dream world. Black Zetsu's voice sounded again, full of endless magic, with endless bewitchment that can devour people's hearts. He said, I can make your dreams come true. Hearing this, Black Zetsu's eyes fell on Madara and Obito. As for Dustless, he was ignored directly. Nonsense, it's Uchiha Madara who wants to control the world and save all mankind, not Kagaya. Madara just sneered again and again. At this moment, his ambition was exposed. From beginning to end, his dream has never changed. It is to step on the heads of all creatures. Of course, saving the world is also one of his tasks. As for Obito's purpose, he just wants to meet Rin in the dream world, and other things are not important. Inevitably, he was bewitched by Black Zetsu, and his will was a little shaken. As long as he meets Rin in the dream world, it doesn't matter to him who becomes God. Idiot, it's so easy to be fooled by me. Seeing Obito in a trance, Black Zetsu laughed again, and at the same time he controlled his body to flow in the direction of Obito. The distance was getting closer and closer, and he was about to merge with him. When Black Zetsu thought that the plan was successful, a sudden change occurred. The 9 floating truth-seeking balls shattered and turned into a few black iron rods. They were connected to each other and formed a prison. In an instant, it turned into a square black cage. Heiju, who was unaware of it, was trapped in it. For more than 10 years, I, Uchiha Obito, have seen through the fickleness of human nature, the fickleness of the world, and all kinds of conspiracies. You think you can get the Jubi for nothing with just a few words? You think too highly of yourself. The indifferent and firm voice with incomparable firmness. Obito's eyes were as bright as the stars, and the whole person's fighting spirit was high, and the loud voice was like rolling thunder resounding through the sky. It seemed that countless scenes of divine thunder were seen, which was spectacular. At last, you have the Jubi's Jinchuriki. Dustless saw this and nodded slightly with a smile on his face, reluctantly recognizing Obito as the second Jinchuriki in the world. Then he just sighed. The space ninjutsu used by Black Zetsu before was somewhat similar to Kagaya's, and the truth-seeking balls could not bind him at all. Sure enough, Dustless's voice just fell, and another change occurred. Chapter 372. The truth-seeking ball is a black sphere formed by the fusion of the 5 elements and the power of yin and yang. It can nullify any ninjutsu in the world and everything it touches will disappear. Although its ability is good, it can only play a small role in some people, such as Black Zetsu. What an arrogant brat who is impervious to everything. This kind of person usually has the misfortune of dying early. His liquefied body emitted a mysterious wave. The space around him twisted and exploded. An ancient aura came from the strange space. Black Zetsu jumped into the unknown mysterious space. Whether it was Obito or Madara, including Dustless, they all frowned. This kind of jutsu has exceeded the definition of the word ninjutsu. This is outrageous. How can my extraterritorial body possess such a divine skill? Seeing Black Zetsu escape from the truth-seeking Jade's cage, Madara felt more uncomfortable than if he had eaten 10 pounds of flies. Black Zetsu's reckless actions were tantamount to slapping his old face in disguise, and it was the most painful kind of slap. Because in the face of such a mysterious and undetectable ninjutsu, Madara could only look at it and sigh silently. Black Zetsu was just a product he created himself. Now he has an invincible ninjutsu that even his master can't use. Not to mention Madara, I'm afraid it's hard for anyone to accept it. Hateful rat. Madara's anger finally turned into a silent sigh and disappeared. Even if he was unwilling, he could only bury it deep in his heart. It's useless to protest with his mouth. It will only make the enemy look down on him more. Black Zetsu's mysterious space ninjutsu can't be described. Even if he's behind you, you can't detect it with your perception alone. This mysterious technique can't be detected, and the biggest feature is that it completely shields the aura. Even the Jubi's Jinchuriki can't feel it. This guy, Dustless's indifferent expression was a little loose and he couldn't help but clench his fists. Black Zetsu is really hateful. His strength is average, but he plays with his superb space ninjutsu. In short, now Black Zetsu is like a slippery loach and Obito is like a strong man. Although he can easily crush this annoying cockroach, he always escapes easily. Stop here. Black Extinction switched from defense to offense at the right time. He shot out like a cannonball. His speed instantly increased by 100 times. His terrifying speed was comparable to Dustless's speed of light. It could be seen that this old man was very cunning. Previously, he had been concealing his strength, showing his weakness to the enemy, waiting for the enemy to relax. Then he would reveal his venomous tongue, like a viper opening its bloody mouth, and launch a fatal sneak attack. Black Zetsu's sudden attack surprised Obito. Obviously, he didn't expect Black Zetsu to hide such a trick. In such a short distance, there was no time to dodge or use Kamui. He just opened his hands and an endless surge of repulsive force spread out. Super Shinra Tensei. A wisp of ripples splashed out in space as an invincible repulsive force that could topple mountains and overturn seas erupted. Even the flowing air was annihilated, forming a large area of vacuum. A suffocating feeling of difficulty in breathing spread out with boundless might. Naive, how can this kind of low-level technique stop me? The rushing black liquid made a disdainful roar, and immediately turned into a thick sharp thorn. It easily broke through the repulsive field of Super Shinra Tensei and went straight to Obito. In just a blink of an eye, it was close to Obito. Even if Uchiha Madara wanted to use Tomb of Reincarnation to help, under such an unprecedented speed, he was helpless. Black Zetsu's speed was beyond the range of Uchiha Madara's vision. moving at the speed of light like Dustless. Puchi. With a special sound of the body being penetrated, looking up, the person who was penetrated was Obito. Obito was penetrated by a black barb. Idiot, any injury suffered by the Jubi's Jinchuriki will be healed instantly. Do you think it's useful? Looking at the sharp black thorns on his chest, Obito said without any ripples. His tone was calm like autumn water, filled with unprecedented calmness. In front of the Jubi's Jinchuriki, any physical attack is futile, any injury will be healed, and even if there is only one cell left, it can condense a new body. In this way I finally caught you. His eyes narrowed, staring at the sharp thorn that entered his body. Obito's face was filled with ferocity. In his eyes, Black Zetsu, who he couldn't catch, was walking into a trap. Several truth-seeking orbs behind him spun rapidly. Just as they were about to tear Black Zetsu into pieces, a cold and hoarse voice rang out. Inyang release, spiritual possession. With the command of Black Zetsu, his whole body quickly liquefied, and all of his body poured into Obito's body, leaving only Obito's face changed dramatically. Ah! After a moment of silence, an unwilling scream resounded through the sky with endless sorrow. Numerous marks appeared on Obito's body, and his whole body quickly shrank as if he was drained of blood. His body twisted rapidly, and the majestic chakra suddenly spread out. A majestic breath came out from Obito's body, and the ground that couldn't withstand this force was annihilated and collapsed. How can there be someone in the world who has such an abnormal chakra? Dustless's pupils stared at Obito's collapsed figure and said in shock. With Obito's original body as the foundation, a new figure slowly condensed. Even he felt a suffocating pressure. Every time the strange body condensed, the violent chakra would be more turbulent, and with Obito as the center, the space was horribly distorted. After a few breaths, the roaring chakra stopped, and a mysterious woman with long silver hair was reflected in Dustless's pupils. Chapter 373. As time went by, the blurry figure became clearer. The figure that came into view was extremely enchanting. Her eyes were pure white like chaos, her skin was as white as snow, and her dark red thin lips added a touch of allure that could cause the downfall of a country. It gave people a feeling that was particularly contradictory. At the same time, she was dignified and inviolable, but at the same time, she was filled with an indescribable wild beauty. The legendary goddess of Moro seems to be just SOSO. His eyes narrowed and his sharp eyes looked at Otsutsuki Kagaya. Dustless frowned. It was not difficult to hear that there was a little regret in his melancholy tone. There was an obvious difference between the current Kagaya and her heyday. Uchiha Madara's mouth twitched violently. According to the meaning of Dustless, he wanted this mysterious woman to be stronger. You too. Her cold and indifferent eyes fell on Madara and Dustless, and her eyes flashed a little color. She said in surprise, "The dead man's body contains the chakra of Indra and Asura. It should be the combination of the two forces that led to my power. It stands to reason that the combination of Indra and Asura's chakra should lead to the power of the Six Paths Sennin, but the power of the Six Paths Sennin originated from Kagaya, and it was not an exaggeration to say that it was her own power." His sight fell on Wu Qin, who was as calm as the wind and clouds. His expression that was as calm as an ancient well became stiff, and the expression of being isolated from the world began to loosen. "Mother, this guy is very weird, don't be careless." In the spacious sleeve, Black Zetsu got out, and his tone was cautious and alert. He had a deep understanding of Dustless's strangeness and mystery. It can be seen that he is indeed different, a freak. Hearing this, Kagaya nodded silently. Dustless in front of her also has the chakra of Asura and Indra, and also has the unique eyes of Otsutsuki. The perfect delicate face evoked a rare smile, and Kagaya didn't care. In front of her, no matter how powerful the eyes were, it was futile. Most of the ninjutsu in the world will be absorbed by her. The amount of chakra in this kid's body is quite large. Under the Byakugan state, Kagaya could clearly see the majestic chakra in Dustless's body. The boundless chakra was vast and boundless, like a vast ocean that was inexhaustible. "Then I'll take everything from you first." She raised her jade-like hand gently, and with a wave of her hand an energy wave shot out. It was a casual attack that was extremely plain, but it contained everything. It was filled with the transformations of Yin, Yang, and the other 5 attributes. Both Dustless and Madara were slightly discolored, and they had a deeper understanding of the horror of Kagaya. The legendary goddess of Uno was like a god of creation. True gods were immortal and indestructible. In my mother's time, there was no concept of ninjutsu. The so-called ninjutsu was just the evolution of later generations. Madara and Dustless burst back and escaped the erosion of the airwaves. This was the horror of Kagaya. She could destroy the sky with a flick of her finger. The ninjutsu in the world was pale and powerless for her, and any ninjutsu would be easily absorbed by her. It could be clearly seen that where the energy wave drifted, the void was slightly distorted. It's the source of chakra, the tree of God. Seeing this, Dustless's pupils shrank slightly, and his face was full of caution. Even if Kagaya was not at her peak, the enemy she showed now was more powerful than anyone he had ever faced before. There was an essential difference. The reaction of these two boys is good. Frowning slightly, Huiji's tone was a little surprised. Then she resumed her indifferent expression. Her light eyes examined Wuchen with passion, with a hint of greed. The majestic chakra contained in Dustless's body was not enough to describe it with the word, vast. There's no need to avoid it, you will be in my bag soon. A light and pleasant voice sounded. Huiji's words revealed a sense of confidence. She was sure that Wuchen was in her bag. As the ancestor of chakra, there was no reason for her to lose to Dustless. It's useless to say more. If you have the ability, come on. I'm afraid that your teeth are not sharp enough, and you will lose a few of your teeth. Dustless directly ignored Kagaya's morbid confidence. There were countless people who wanted to kill him. Kagaya was just the most powerful one in this group. As for Uchiha Madara, he was directly ignored by the two. He played little role in this level of battle. You have a sharp tongue. When I capture you, I hope you can still be so eloquent. With a snort, Kagaya was too lazy to waste her breath. It was impossible to expect Dustless to wait for death. She could only crush him with absolute strength. Kill Grey Bone. The slender bone spear shot out from the palm of his hand and whistled directly towards Wuchen. The sharp rays of light teased the incomparable rays of light and could penetrate anything that came in contact with it. Seeing this, Wuchen just smiled and didn't dodge. His body glowed with a golden luster at the same time. He stood still with a leisurely and indifferent expression like a stone sculpture. Whoosh! The bone spear passed through Dustless's body, but it couldn't shake him at all. He stood there quietly and stared at the frowning Kagaya. Mother, that kid's ability is very strange. Ordinary physical attacks don't seem to work on him. Only some extraordinary means can work on him. Black Zetsu said in a hoarse voice. Over the years, he had studied Dustless's ability and gained a lot of experience. Naturally, he had his own unique views. So what? Any attack is invalid and it will only become a stronger nourishment for me? Kagaya's eyes flashed with a strong sense of possessiveness. Dustless's majestic body and chakra behind him, she was determined to get it. No one could stop her. Chapter 374. Kagaya's resurrection is not complete, but Dustless is not afraid. Kagaya treats him as a meal on her plate and so does Dustless. The Jubi's Jinchuriki is the source of chakra, and no one is not jealous of it. You treat me as something in the bag, but I am also determined to get you. Staring at Kagaya with a smile, Dustless's tone was unusually firm, and his resolute voice was unshakable. It's hard to say who is whose prey. At least Dustless doesn't think that he will be swallowed by Kagaya. Remember this old monster. Raising his eyelids, Wuchen's aura rose to the limit. His stern eyes emitted a cold light that penetrated through everything. His cold voice was like a biting cold winter. No matter what kind of monster you are, it doesn't matter. All in all, for me you are a stepping stone for me to become stronger. It's best not to try to resist me, and let me put the collar on your neck obediently. In this way I can save your face. His gaze fell on Otsutsuki Kagaya's body, and the eye power in his eyes was surging like stormy waves, and the oppressive eye power was enough to distort the void. Shameless boasting. Hearing this, Huiji's beautiful face turned cold and her eyes were filled with fire. The words of a shameless junior who was thousands of years younger than her were especially harsh. He actually said that he wanted to put a collar on her. How ridiculous. Mother, please calm down. This kid just provoked your anger and took the opportunity to seize your weakness to give a fatal blow. Feeling the murderous aura overflowing from Kagaya's body, Black Zetsu persuaded with cold sweat. That oppressive, majestic, murderous aura also made him feel suffocated. If you want to destroy it, you must first make it crazy. This is Dustless's usual trick, Mother. Please don't fall for it. After about a while, Kagaya seemed to have listened to Black Zetsu's advice, and her murderous aura dissipated, and her whole person calmed down, but even so, the remaining murderous aura in the void was still terrifying. Ka. Huey tore at the space in front of her with both hands, and the space in front of her instantly collapsed. She stared at the dark crack in front of her, and without thinking, she entered it. There was no trace of him at all. His aura had also completely disappeared, vanishing from the world. What a convenient technique. Seeing this, Dustless's pupils solidified, and the hairs all over his body stood up. This unknown space ninjutsu was extremely strange. Whether it appeared or had no aura, it was impossible to capture it. Ka. The void behind Dustless suddenly twisted, and a beautiful figure emerged from it. Her beautiful silver hair fluttered in the wind, and her seemingly delicate hand grabbed at Dustless. Suddenly he felt that his neck was bound by something cold and soft. Dustless was slightly stunned and turned his head. It was Huey G with a complicated expression. At such a close distance, Dustless could even smell the elegant body fragrance on Huey G's body. The hot air exhaled from her jade-like nose also swam Dustless's side. Take your claws away from me. Turning his head and looking at the hand on his neck, Dustless said coldly. At the same time, a cold light flashed in his eyes. The golden particles in his hand gathered, and a slender and sharp golden sword suddenly flashed. Just as he was about to raise his blade and cut Huey off, her light voice rang out. I can see the shadow of Hagoromo and Himura from your figure. She quietly stroked Dustless's face, and 2 lines of tears fell uncontrollably from the corners of her eyes. Huey G's tone was sobbing. Being betrayed by her own son, no matter who was right or wrong, was a chilling thing. Blood is thicker than water. Any mother who is betrayed by her own son will despair. Staring at Huey G's eyes, Dustless's eyes were as clear as water. In the dark, he saw through the depths of her heart. The real pain was not to kill the other party directly. With the betrayal of Himura and Hagoromo, her heart was as cold as ice, and she completely sealed herself. There was no mother in the world who didn't love her own child. Be a part of my power, I can help you fulfill your long-cherished wish. The Kusanagi sword stopped. It seemed that the so-called conscience was replaced by Huey G's true feelings. Dustless's voice suddenly became much lighter. Although it was still very cold, it gave people a feeling of a lot more human feelings. Obviously, Huey G couldn't accept Dustless's meaning. She was the goddess of Mao, the god of creation. It was simply wishful thinking for her to be a part of Dustless. You're no match for me. I'm immortal and indestructible. Hearing this, Huey G's voice was light. Even though she was an old monster who had lived for thousands of years, she was still young. Time did not leave a trace on her body. In that case, I can only force you to wear a collar. The conscience in his eyes was completely restrained. Dustless turned into a fierce beast that only knew how to kill. The Kusanagi sword rose from the ground, and the blade slashed towards Huey G's face. The sharp light could cut through everything. It was enough to see that Dustless didn't have the slightest mercy. After all, Huey G was immortal. Even if she was injured, she would recover. She could be said to be the strongest existence. Small tricks are useless against me. Seeing this, a faint smile appeared on Huey's face. An ordinary-looking bone appeared in the palm of her other hand, and she indifferently threw it towards the incoming golden light. Clang! The buzzing sound of steel colliding suddenly sounded, and a fleeting spark swept up. Looking up, Huey G easily borrowed Dustless's attack. At the same time, Dustless's body glowed with a gorgeous golden luster, and Huey G's hand also left Dustless's face. Why do I have such a feeling? Frowning, Huey G stared at the thin figure that had gathered again in the distance. The tears at the corner of her eyes disappeared. In an instant she had an inexplicable feeling. Dustless was clearly in front of her, but he gave her a ridiculous feeling that he was far away. She couldn't grasp the golden figure with her hand alone. This time was forever. Chapter 375. Boom boom boom. The ear-piercing roar resounded through the sky, and invisible ripples splashed in the void. The white clouds that were struggling at death's door were swallowed up and disappeared without a trace. Looking up, it was Dustless and Kagaya who were fighting. The abilities of both of them had obviously reached the limit. When they moved, the wind and thunder would roll and the earth would sink. Even if it was just a simple physical battle, the extent of the exaggerated fighting was infinitely vast and affected the entire sky. Yasakani no Magatama. Tens of thousands of rays of light poured down, and the densely packed number was enough to turn people into a sieve. It was cold and ruthless. Dustless, the caster, was full of murderous intent and developed the power of this technique to the limit. The powerful aura enveloped every corner of the sky. It's a very novel move, but, looking straight at the tens of thousands of rays of light, Kaguya just smiled in relief. Her thin and delicate body emitted a huge amount of chakra waves. Such an ordinary attack is useless against me. High-density chakra gathered in the palm of her hand, and with a gentle wave of her hand, the shadows of the fist were clearly visible. 80 God's air attack. Above the boundless void, boundless fists bloomed with a bang. The uncountable number of fists dazzled everyone's eyes as they collided with the golden light bullets that were speeding towards them. Bang bang bang. It was obvious that the power of the fists was above the golden light bullets, and they were as fierce as tigers. In the blink of an eye, the light bullets all over the sky were disintegrated, and they rushed toward Dustless with more ferocious force. Compared with the shadows all over the sky, Dustless, who was alone, seemed to be abandoned by the whole world, like a criminal who was about to be executed. This monotonous technique also has no effect on me. The Rinnegan Sharingan rippled, and the 9 mysterious Magatama hanging on the black lines trembled. The sky splashed with weak ripples, and the invisible airwaves quietly spread. Mahabharata. As Wu Chen's voice fell, the weak ripples instantly became thousands of times stronger, turning into an earth-shattering airwave. With an unstoppable momentum, it simply swallowed the countless fists like a whale. Is this the ability of his left eye? Amir Jr. can actually reach such a level. Seeing the sky full of fists collapse in an instant, Huey's eyes flashed with a little shock. Dustless was the first person to destroy her move so easily. Everything is about reciprocity. This is my reciprocation. The blue pupil power in his right eye started to go berserk, and a boundless repulsive force shot out. His aura was raised to the limit, and the faint golden light in his hand was clearly visible. This brat. Seeing this, Huey was stunned. Then she looked at Dustless with admiration. Since ancient times, Dustless was the only one other than her deadly enemy who could fight her head-on and not be at a disadvantage. Golden Wheel Reincarnation. The sound of something breaking through the air suddenly rang out, and a dazzling golden luster came into view. Looking up, a golden beam of light that almost covered the entire void swept over. Dustless's face was indifferent, his face was not red, and he was not out of breath, as if he was silently saying that as long as it is possible, it is not a problem to extend it several times. Very strong. Stronger than the Hagoromo and the Hamura brothers. You're very good, brat. Huey nodded secretly. Although she said so, her expression was calm. Her jade hand shook slightly, and several black balls turned into a mysterious black enchantment on her side. The enchantment that was as thin as a cicada's wing seemed to be easily broken, but whether it was Huey G or Black Zetsu in her sleeve, they were both calm and composed. They stood quietly in the same place without dodging or evading, mocking Dustless's weakness. This kid is a problem student. His bones are very hard and he is not disciplined. It is time for Mother's game time to end. You should collect the chakra scattered all over the world as soon as possible. Black Zetsu in Huey's sleeve suggested. He had a deep understanding of Dustless's difficulty. Mother was very strong, and as a chakra Huiwa had a variety of trump cards, but Dustless was the same. For more than 10 years, no one had forced Dustless to use his full strength. Uchiha Madara couldn't do it, and Uchiha Obito couldn't do it. What you said is true. This kid is indeed unusual. He is a qualified stepping stone. Collect the chakra's hand and deal with him. Huey nodded her white chin, and the interest in her eyes disappeared in an instant. She looked into the distance and saw the situation of the whole world. At the same time, the golden light sword also came into close contact with the black defensive enchantment. Kacha, there was a violent vibration in the void and a crisp sound suddenly sounded. Looking up, she thought that the black enchantment as thin as a cicada's wing would be annihilated by the force, but in fact, it was not. It's so powerful it's really scary. Wu Qin sighed. Following his line of sight, he saw that the thousands of feet-long golden light sword was strangely broken into 2 halves, and the initiator was the black defensive wall. On the black enchantment condensed by the truth-seeking ball, only a trace was left. She's too strong. This is the case when she is not in her complete state. No wonder Hagoromo Sannin and Otsutsuki Himura could only seal her. Black hair fluttered in the wind, Dustless's eyes were unusually deep, and the corner of his mouth was gently raised with a calm smile. Whether it was the Tensigan or Rinsei Sharingan, they were not his trump cards. Although Otsutsuki Kagaya was unbelievably strong, Dustless was still confident enough to defeat her, and finally put the chain around her neck and make her part of his strength. Kacha! Suddenly the ground shattered and a thick green tree penetrated into the void. It coincided with the divine tree released by Obito before, and the bud that was about to bloom was clearly visible. This is the divine tree, but something seems wrong. Chapter 376. The green trees went deep into the ground, connecting the sky and the earth, and the developed roots were dense like a spider web, penetrating every inch of the earth. Absorbing nutrients from the earth without limit, the roots grew luxuriant branches, crazily surging in all directions as if they had been fed with hormones. The whole world was suddenly swallowed by this dark green forest. Whether it was the Ninja Coalition Army or the White Zetsu Army, they were all swallowed up, and only some peerless powerhouses could barely survive. Of course, Dustless wasn't worried about Konan, Yuluo, Hinata, Hanrin, Cheyenne, and the other girls. Although the scope of this unknown technique was extremely terrifying, it wasn't targeted. It just swallowed the whole world. Moreover, Dustless was familiar with the bodies of the girls, and these attacks didn't cause any trouble for them. You seem to be very relaxed. From your expression, you seem to know me quite well. I'm curious, how do you have the confidence to face me when you're so calm and composed? Kagaya frowned. Dustless looked indifferent, giving the feeling that he wouldn't change his expression even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. His breathing was steady and powerful, and his deep eyes were as bright as the stars. This confidence made Huiji feel very uncomfortable. Her face turned gloomy and murderous. If she was just playing around with Wuxia earlier, now she really wanted to kill him. Especially through the tree on the ground, a steady stream of chakra entered her body, and Kagaya felt an unprecedented comfort. She was close to recovering to the peak. That is, her eyes narrowed slightly, staring at the Kagaya's yang attribute chakra on the ground. Kagaya's face was full of desire. The only thing she lacked among the tailed beasts was the Kagaya's yang attribute chakra. Ka. The ground under Kagaya's feet burst open and countless green vines directly entangled him, easily tying him up, and began to devour the Kagaya's chakra. Ao. Because his consciousness was controlled, Kagaya could only instinctively let out a burst of sadness, full of nostalgia for the world, and even if he was unwilling he couldn't do anything. Facing the powerful Kagaya, Kyubi, who was once a part of her, could not resist at all. After a while, the nine-tailed chakra was sucked into the divine tree through the dense vines, and then directly into Kagaya's body through a special method. This long-lost feeling is really irresistible. Kagaya muttered to herself absent-mindedly. Originally, when Black Zetsu resurrected her, it was not complete. The lack of Kyubi's yang chakra caused her strength to be greatly reduced. Now that the chakra of the nine-tailed beast had completely merged into one, Kagaya naturally regained her previous cultivation. Before I deal with you, I'll deal with this annoying bug first. She casually glanced at Dustless and the space in front of her shattered. An ancient and mysterious aura floated out of the dark space that could devour everything. Without a second thought, Huey stepped right in. The most primitive space ninjutsu. Although invading her space consumes some chakra, it's just a drop in the bucket for me. After observing for a while, Dustless's frowning brows loosened, and the corners of his mouth raised a smile of success. With a sneer, his eyes were filled with murderous intent as he stared at Kagaya, who sneaked into the dark space. Ka. The space quietly opened again and Kagaya rushed out of it. The dead man in red armor in front of her was obviously not Dustless, but Uchiha Madara. A dead mortal is using my power unscrupulously. This is blasphemy. Kagaya was furious. Chakra was something that belonged to her alone. Now these ants are using her power without permission. It's unforgivable. A voice full of endless killing intent sounded behind him. Uchiha Madara was shocked and turned around without hesitation. What he saw was a sharp bone spear whistling towards him. Puchi. With the sound of flesh being cut, looking up, Uchiha Madara's abdomen was pierced with sharp bone spears, deep inside Madara's body, full of some special, indescribable special power devouring Madara's body. The invincible Edo Tensei was collapsing. Don't show such a shocked expression. This is one of Mother's strongest moves. Anything that comes into contact with Grey Bone's mutual slaying, will gradually collapse, including combatants that have been reincarnated from Edo Tensei. Seeing Uchiha Madara's incredible expression, Black Zetsu explained out of kindness. Even if I die, I will take you too with me. His pupils suddenly widened and Uchiha Madara roared unwillingly. His life's plan was a wedding dress for others in the end. How could he not be angry? He vowed that even if he died he would take Black Zetsu and Kagaya with him. There are a lot of problem children who are not disciplined. Looking at Uchiha Madara's dying struggle, Black Zetsu's tone was extremely cold. Wheel grave, border prison. With his last strength, Uchiha Madara uttered his last song, and an unprecedented repulsion exploded with Madara's hatred. Insignificant skill. Kagaya just shook her head slightly, raised her hand, and shot out a strong hurricane, directly killing the shadow summoned by Madara from the wheel grave. Others may not be aware of it, but she could see it clearly. Uchiha Madara's face suddenly turned ugly, and when he was about to launch the wheel grave again, his body had completely collapsed and disappeared forever with the wind. One is dead. When she turned around and was about to kill Dustless, the golden brilliance suddenly resounded through the sky. Staring at the golden brilliance above the sky, Kagaya, who was bathed in it, felt a sense of panic instinctively. In the face of this golden light, she who was immortal, seemed to have met a deadly enemy. Your power is very strong, but next I should also show my power to play with you. Even you, the goddess of Uno, don't understand light. Chapter 377. A dazzling brilliance came head-on, and the boundless energy tide was like a vast ocean, rushing towards Huey with great pressure. Don't touch it. An unprecedented aura of death shrouded her body, and Huey-G's eyes were filled with determination. She made a prompt decision, and her weak little hand tore the void in front of her. Ka. The seemingly weak little hand was extremely terrifying. A crack appeared in the space in front of her, and Huey-G stepped into it without hesitation. On the other hand, Dustless also had a shocking change at this moment. His eyes were faintly dotted with some golden light spots, and it was dazzling. His indifferent temperament added some dominance for no reason. A sense of dominance over all living things arose spontaneously. Boom, boom, boom. The golden energy tide was like an ancient lament, and the entire sky was wailing, faintly begging for mercy, emitting waves of mournful cries. Looking up, the void was strangely boiling and the flowing air was emitting hot waves. It was obvious that it was evaporated by this strange golden power. This is one of my abilities. Both eyes looked at the void in front of him. Where Dustless's gaze was focused, the void distorted and rippled. Huey-G's peerless figure stood out. Different from before, the indifferent Huey-G's expression finally relaxed, and there was a hint of embarrassment and discomfort. Treacherous sinner, you deserve to die. Huey-G's face was pale, and her eyes were filled with anger that could burn all living things. Her murderous intent was awe-inspiring, and because of her excessive anger, her graceful body was trembling slightly. Following Dustless's gaze, Huey-G was in an extremely embarrassing state. There were obvious burn marks on her body, and on the right side of her chest, one could clearly see the white jade-like skin. Further down, it was a place that was not suitable for children. Her white skin was tinged with red, and it was faintly discernible, causing one's imagination to run wild. It was no wonder that Huey-G was so angry. The high and mighty goddess of Mao was forced into such an embarrassing state by Dustless. How could she not be angry? I am the flash person who ate the flash fruit, and my physique has also inherited everything of light. Dustless's dry and cracked lips opened slightly. He did not care whether Huey-G understood or not. He said to himself, the ability I used before was the usual move of the glistening fruit. Dustless's indifferent eyes fell on Huey's body. His voice was as light as autumn water, revealing a state of being aloof from worldly affairs. Like I said before, you just need to stand there quietly and let me put the collar on you. But you swore at me and even raised your sword at me. You only have yourself to blame. The mystery of light is something that even a god cannot understand. After speaking, Dustless stood with his hands behind his back. The corner of his mouth curled up into a light smile. He was fearless. Shameless boasting. Huey-G's pretty face changed drastically. Her eyes scanned her body without leaving a trace, and her face flashed with shame and anger. She waved her hand and the brand new divine robe condensed again. The exposed parts were also covered. Whoosh! She lifted her hand gently and chakra erupted. There was no fancy move, just a casual wave of chakra, and a strong wave of air suddenly appeared in the void. There was no need for fancy moves, it was direct and concise. Huiji was like this. Looking into the distance, the blade storm was formed in an instant. The scale was huge, comparable to a small black hole in the universe. It directly swallowed and distorted the sky. The small black hole in the center was enough to swallow the world. The ninjutsu in the world is derived from you, but so what? The physical attacks in the world are ineffective against me. Feeling the endless gravitational force in the vortex, Dustless looked relaxed and calm. His messy black hair danced and his clothes were blown up by the wind, but he was surprisingly calm. Now I will let you see the true ability of light. It is the ability to surpass the normal state of the devil fruit. It is the foundation of the original move, the awakening state of glinting fruit. The strange smile on the corner of his mouth disappeared in an instant. Dustless's whole body was covered with golden chakra. The evil wave suddenly descended, and the giant samurai stood between heaven and earth. This time, Kinsusanu was different from any previous time. Because the Uchiha family is a cursed family, abandoned by the heavens, only by falling will they gain great strength. Therefore the ninjutsu used has an evil aura. Kinsusanu was even more so. It was as ferocious as a ghost, and the evil aura was more intense. However, this time, Kinsusanu displayed by Dustless was different from before. The evil aura disappeared, and the exaggerated height of nearly 200 meters was very peaceful. The feeling it gave was also particularly strange. It was as if bathing in the winter sun, and it was particularly warm. I've seen a ghost. Black Zetsu, who was in Kagaya's sleeve, was stunned for a long time, then the corners of his mouth squirmed as he said in surprise. It's not that he hasn't seen the Susanoo of the Uchiha clan before. It gives people a pure feeling of evil, full of endless destruction. The original meaning of Kinsusanu was destruction. The Kansusanu in front of him was very gentle, and it didn't give the feeling of depression and despair, but infinite vitality. There is no need to be surprised. It is also the first time I used the awakening state of glinting fruit. It is normal that you don't know. I am invincible in this state. With a little golden light in his eyes, Dustless's loud voice resounded through the sky. The reason why Kinsusanu was so different was very simple. Dustless in the awakening state of glinting fruit and Kinsusanu was naturally different. Light is an extremely contradictory thing. Destruction and rebirth exist together, so Kinsusanu was the same. Under Kagaya's astonished gaze, Wu Chen's expression turned cold. Susanoo raised its arm high, and as if it had received the command of God, the light particles from all over the world all poured into its arm. How could this happen? Looking at the thing formed in Dustless's hand in horror, Kagaya's face changed dramatically and became gloomy. Chapter 378. Kagaya's face was full of astonishment. Her calm heart had been settled for thousands of years, and it was calm like stagnant water. At this moment, her heart was like a stormy sea. Damn kid, I should have killed him secretly at the beginning. It's a mistake to grow to this day. Black Zetsu stared at the light ball held in Kinsusanu's hand. He was composed of black liquid matter and said with hatred. At the same time, he did not hesitate to curse Uchiha Madara who had died. Yes, it was indeed a mistake not to get rid of him. Huey lowered her head, her eyes flickering with a strange light. She tried her best to pretend to be calm, but everyone could hear the regret in her voice. It's all my fault. Black Zetsu sighed in the sleeve, full of helplessness. At the same time he changed the thread of discussion and said tentatively, Mother, this guy's strength is so strong. It's not a bad thing for us to walk on thin ice. Black Zetsu's voice made Kagaya slightly stunned. After a while, she nodded silently. Although there's a suspicion of inviting a wolf into the house, it's still a feasible plan. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. That woman's goal is all living things including me. This little brat called Wu Chen is also her prey. Especially someone with such shocking strength like him, that B***-starred woman absolutely has no reason to let him go. After all, this is the blood that makes her stronger. Kagaya's mind fell into memories, recalling the mysterious woman who had invaded this land. Her face was gloomy. It was because she was not the opponent of that woman that she released the big illusion of infinite Tsukuyami to the whole world and turned all human beings into her soldiers to fight against the enemy. Damn, it's hot. Black Setsu in the sleeve groaned and stared at the light ball in the hand of perfect form Kinsusanu, full of fear. The principle of this technique seems to be the same as Mother's expansion truth-seeking ball. The sky for hundreds of miles was shrouded in golden flashes. The blazing temperature eroded the void. Because of the light, destruction and new life coexisted. Looking into the distance, Kinsusanu was holding a huge light ball in his hand. It was as terrifying as the sun, constantly absorbing the photons of the outside world to expand its size. Anything that came into contact with it would instantly evaporate. On the other hand, the world inside the light sphere was warm, peaceful, and full of vitality. It was as if as long as this devastated world was destroyed, the constantly expanding new world inside the light sphere would replace it. I have an immortal body. She stared fearlessly at the ball of light that was getting closer and closer, or rather, the sun that was getting closer and closer. At the same time, her aura rose and her face was solemn. It was as if she was ready to fight to the death with Dustless. But in Black Jew's ears, his confidence was lacking. As the saying goes, there is always someone stronger than the strong. If Kaguya was really undying and fearless, there would be no need for her to waste infinite Tsukuyami to create her own soldiers to fight the invaders from the other world. Just like Uchiha Madara, he didn't see Kaguya's peerless talent and thought that he was invincible. In fact, in Kaguya's eyes, he was just a clown. This world is an important nursery for me. Let's change to another world to fight to the death. Kaguya's line of sight expanded, and the situation of the entire world was visible at a glance. She didn't care about Dustless. Her slender fingers elegantly stretched out of her sleeve, and with a flick of her fingers, ripples splashed in the void. In an instant, an extremely overbearing aura overflowed from her body, and Kaguya transformed into a peerless goddess who controlled everything in the world. Time and space were rapidly distorted. With a delicate shout, the world in front of her suddenly began to shift and become a strange world. Heaven's defense. The world reflected in her line of sight was completely different, and it became an unknown mysterious space full of dissolved acid. Dustless was suddenly forcibly pulled into this strange world. Plop! Caught off guard, Kinsusanu fell directly into the ocean full of acid. The invincible Kinsusanu was dismembered and melted into nothingness in the blink of an eye. Only the golden energy ball that gathered in the sky was left. Want to devour me? Then I'll devour your world of dissolved acid first. With a sinister smile, Dustless's body emerged from the acid sea, and he looked at Kaguya with a gloomy face. At the same time, he waved his hand suddenly, and the huge light ball began to expand at a speed that was difficult to see with the naked eye. Turn into ashes with your world. The golden energy ball expanded without limit, and in a short period of time, its volume was several times larger than before. No matter what it touched, it turned into ashes and evaporated. Including the dissolved acid of Kinsusanu, which had previously melted, after boiling for a while, it was still evaporated easily. The constantly expanding golden light created a new space and devoured everything in the original world. It could be said that it was both a creation and a destruction technique. It was completely similar to Kaguya's expansion truth-seeking jade. This was one of the moves that Dustless used the Glint Fruit's awakening state and Kinsusanu. It was not inferior to Kaguya's expansion truth-seeking jade. This little brat really wants to kill us all. Taking a deep breath, Kaguya clenched her fists and said in a suppressed voice. If it was an ordinary technique she could absorb it, but light was not a technique. In such a serious situation there were only two choices. Either she braced herself and was swallowed by the golden light, or she passively avoided the battle. Without thinking, Kaguya directly tore the space and jumped in without hesitation. She was not a masochist. Even if she had an immortal body, she did not dare to fight head-on. And this strange light ball gave her an extremely dangerous feeling. Even if she had an immortal body, she would not be able to recover. Stupid woman, this is what I've been waiting for. Seeing this, Dustless's mouth raised a strange smile. He stared at the closed dark space that had not yet disappeared. His eyes turned and emitted a surge of eye power. The world-destroying light ball disappeared along with Dustless. Chapter 379. In a strange space full of ice and snow, the void was distorted and ripples spread out. The small vortex gradually enlarged and a figure drilled out of it. Taking a closer look, it was Kaguya who was forced to retreat by Dustless. The ability of light, it's really tricky. That kid with a mortal body can steal the ability of a god. It's really enviable. Clenching her fists, a pleasant voice of admiration sounded in the void. The soft magnetic voice full of admiration lingered in the sky for a long time without dispersing. There was no one in the boundless ice and snow world. There is no doubt that the person who spoke is Kaguya. Thinking of Dustless's strange move, she sincerely sighed. Mother, that Flash kid is our enemy. Black Zetsu in the robe didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Kaguya's words made him speechless. Although he also quite appreciates Dustless, after all, to be able to rely on his own strength to fight Kaguya, the ancestor of chakra, is not something a mortal can do. But in the final analysis, the two sides have different standpoints and are destined to be enemies. Of course I know this. Hearing this, Kaguya faintly responded. After all, their standpoints are different. For Dustless, she only appreciates him and has no other complicated thoughts. That kid actually wants to give it to me? Thinking of Dustless's arrogant words before, Kaguya's murderous intent was awe-inspiring. Dustless shamelessly said that he would put a collar on her. This is no longer a simple insult. It's a direct slap in the face, trampling on her dignity. All living things are under my control. A mere ant wants to possess me. A child of a concubine doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. With a snort, Kaguya's murderous intent was awe-inspiring. Dustless's ambition to become the Jinchuriki of the ten-tailed beast also means that Kaguya will lose her freedom again and live in the cage built for her by Dustless. Kacha? A powerful energy fluctuation suddenly came from the void, and the calm horizon suddenly twisted. The small vortex gradually enlarged as if it was being torn apart by some special power. In the blink of an eye, a dark black hole nearly 1,000 meters in size could be clearly seen. After a few breaths of time, it was filled with golden light. An unprecedented golden ball of light fell with Dustless's voice and swallowed Huey. The life and death of the people of this world have nothing to do with me, and the fate of whoever you decide is also your own will. However, there is one thing that you seem to have not understood. Dustless, who was floating in the sky, came into view. He stared at Huey, who was swallowed by the ball of light, with a contemptuous smile. His pupils dilated, and his cold voice echoed in the void. I am the one who controls your life. Your life is in my hands, not the heavens. As soon as he finished speaking, the world of ice and snow was swallowed by the energy ball that was magnified without limit. Everything that came into contact with the ball of light was annihilated and turned into nothingness. At the same time, a new and unfamiliar space was born. You will never understand in this lifetime. Retracting his gaze, Dustless's eyes were calm again. Huey would never understand how he invaded, but in fact it was very simple. Back then, when he defeated Obito in the system, Dustless obtained all of Obito's abilities, including his Mangekyo ability. The moment Huey used Heaven's defense, he used God's might to swallow the golden energy ball and put it into a different space. At the same time, he used God's might again to resonate with Huey's space. That was how he invaded. The process was simple and direct, but in fact it was extremely difficult. The gap between the techniques had to be grasped very accurately. Gone with the wind with your ambition. Farewell, Huey. A new world was born in a different space. Flowers, trees, birds, and beasts were all there. The fresh air of nature rushed into the ear and nose, and a strange sense of familiarity arose spontaneously. It was completely different from the previous world of snow. When he looked up, he saw that the entire world had undergone a tremendous change. It was different from the truth-seeking jade, but the principle was almost the same. The truth-seeking jade was a transformation of the 7 natures of the 5 elements in yin and yang. Light was a unique special attribute, and it could be said to be able to destroy and create the world. This old monster is really troublesome. Scratching his head with a headache, Wu Chen's eyes flashed with surprise. Following his line of sight, no one could remain calm when they saw the scene in front of them. Being attacked by Dustless's sudden attack, Huey was caught off guard and was hit. Her body was constantly swallowed by the golden light ball. What was shocking was that while she was being swallowed, her body was rapidly recovering. The next second after being annihilated, a new body was condensed. Imprisoning her in my body, I should be able to do the same. Dustless's eyes were shining, and the covetousness in his eyes was undisguised. His gaze was naked and direct, and it was full of longing. Mysterious runes appeared all over his body, and the ancient sound of Sanskrit drifted out. An ancient aura crossed the eternal space and quietly descended to the world. Looking up, Dustless's body changed strangely again. The light was thousands of feet long, and it was like a shining person covered in the sun. His whole body was covered with endless devouring power that could suck the vast universe. Just as he was about to absorb Huey into his body, another change occurred. Suddenly, weak ripples splashed in the void and the weak ripples merged into the void. It was silent and extremely weak, like a breeze that was not worth mentioning. The moment it came into contact with Dustless, the situation changed dramatically. The weak ripples turned into a destructive storm that annihilated the sky. Time and space were distorted beyond recognition and it was a mess. Dustless, who didn't realize it, was hit by an unprecedented attack and was directly thrown out. It's not Otsutsuki Kagaya, this special power is not chakra, nor does it belong to the category of immortal technique, let alone taijutsu. His face changed dramatically, and he stared at the dark space in front of him. Where his line of sight focused, he could clearly see countless blood mist filling the air. The majestic power that crushed the sky made even Dustless's calmness stunned. On the contrary, Huey, who escaped from Dustless's awe-inspiring attack, had an ugly expression on her face, and there was a faint fear in her eyes. Chapter 380. Taking a deep breath, Dustless forcibly suppressed the shock in his heart. His pupils overflowed with blood as he stared at the black hole in front of him, and his eyes flashed with horror. Breaking the void with a snap of the fingers, are you kidding me? Even with Dustless's unchanging heart, he was shocked beyond words. He and Kagaya, including Uchiha Obito, can use space ninjutsu at will, but there is an essential difference between breaking the void with brute force. To some extent, the reason why Dustless can tear the space is because of the ability of Kamui, and the mysterious enemy who suddenly appeared is completely with his own pure strength. Especially the airwave that just bounced him away, Dustless felt that he was particularly fragile, no different from a lonely boat in the sea as long as the other party can pinch him to death. Humph, no matter who you are, people who disturb my good things will end up the same death. Dustless's Rinnegan was filled with endless killing intent. His tone was as cold as ice. He is not the kind of person who will resign himself to adversity. This is his belief in life. Being slapped in the face and not biting back, this is not his style of seeking death, and the word fear is not in Dustless's dictionary. Dustless's Rinnegan opened wide, and the focus of his sight was the bottomless black hole. The surging eye power with the anger of Dustless surged out. Ninjutsu has no limit, it is completely different from person to person, the strong is strong and the weak is weak. Mahabharata. In the center of the black hole, invisible ripples with white light spread out, and the boiling airwaves swept away the fallen leaves, dispersing the endless darkness and blood mist, and in the blink of an eye, the sky was restored to clear. It's just SOSO. Seeing the black smoke being swallowed by the airwaves, Dustless's mouth raised a smile. In less than a moment, the smile on the corner of the mouth directly stiffened. The darkness and blood mist that had been swallowed by the Mahabharata boiled up again. Its momentum was monstrous, covering the sky. It was so arrogant that it was almost liquefied. It was extremely oppressive. Dustless seemed to hear the sharp screams of 10,000 ghosts, and his mind was filled with a roar. After a few breaths of time, he regained his clarity. He stared at the black hole surrounded by blood mist with a gloomy and fearful expression. Little brat, that woman is not as simple as you think. There are 3,000 universes, 3,000 worlds, and thousands of races in the vast universe. There are countless experts. I am a god, and similarly there are gods who are stronger than me. The space beside him shattered silently, and a beautiful figure jumped out from it. It was Huey G, who was holding a sharp bone. She landed beside Dustless with a serious expression. The voice was gentle and pleasant. It was undoubtedly Kagaya. Moving his feet, he turned around and examined Huey G. Wuxia frowned. This fellow was actually unscathed and full of energy. Of course she was not completely unscathed. At the very least, Huey G's face was pale. So what? The sky is high. When the time comes, as long as I take you, I will be able to live freely in the world. Even if you are a god, you will not be able to stop my progress. Looking at Huey G expressionlessly, Dustless's eyes were filled with death light. Just as he was about to swallow her and fly away, a sudden voice startled Dustless. Ah! Thousands of years have passed, but you still haven't changed, a light and teasing voice quietly spread. The sound wave that came was filled with the smell of blood, and a fiery red demonic figure came into view. Dustless frowned. This dense murderous aura made him feel like he was in purgatory. The light voice was a little surprised. After silently observing for a while, it said with a teasing tone, "Huey, you are an old monster who has lived for thousands of years. You actually have this kind of fetish? You stole an energetic Mahabharata." Bang. The fiery red figure was directly blown up by the invisible airwave. The whole body turned into a demonic blood mist, and the blood beads scattered in the void. The strange blood beads floated in the void, and suddenly emitted a dark red blood light. It was like the summons of God, and once again reassembled to form the previous figure. The fairy-like pretty face appeared again. Her red lips were raised and her sight also fell on Wu Chen's body. Her eyes, which were as resplendent as gemstones, flashed with surprise. "Tsk, no wonder you old witch would like him. He is strong and his eyes are not weaker than yours. Tsk. If it were me, I might also choose such a spouse as my husband." A strange voice sounded. The beautiful woman in red did not care about the situation. She completely ignored Dustless and Huey and muttered to herself. The pleasant voice was deliberately amplified and lingered in the void for a long time without dissipating. "What a strange ninjutsu. It seems to be similar to the ability of my glint fruit. It can also ignore physical attacks. As a man, Dustless's skin was as thick as the city wall." He turned a deaf ear to the woman in red's ridicule and thought secretly in his heart. However, the thin-skinned Huey couldn't keep her face. As the goddess of Uno, she could treat it as a fart and pretend that she didn't hear anything. Dustless, the person involved, was indeed present. Naturally, he had to take care of his face. The bone spear in his hand surged with cold light, and the space in front of him shattered. He jumped into the dark, mysterious space. When he reappeared, he was already beside the woman in red. The bone blade in his hand rose and fell, and directly slashed towards the neck of the woman in red. The edge of the blade could easily flatten large mountains. "After thousands of years, you still haven't changed at all." The woman in red was shocked and her face was calm. Obviously, she knew that Huey would suddenly attack, and there was a smile in her red eyes. Her dress trembled, overflowing with dark red blood light. The luster condensed into a prison and bound Huey in it. "Ah, I've already figured out this trick of yours 1,000 years ago." The woman in red's eyes turned and she was extremely proud. "No matter who you are, whether she is the sacred tree or Jubi, Atsutsuki Kagaya, they are all part of my power. Those who touch them without permission will be killed without mercy." Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. Chapter 381. There was no doubt that the owner of the domineering voice was Dustless. This guy, staring at the boundless golden light swords, the woman in red frowned. Her face was no longer as calm as before. Instead, a hint of caution appeared on her delicate, jade-like face. At the same time, the golden light sword that was about to cut the entire world in half came down. Child's play. Looking up at the light beam that was about to cut her in half, the woman in red's expression was indifferent. She lifted her slender fingers slightly, revealing her snow-white wrist. A bloody light rose from the ground and headed straight for the light beam above her head. The bloody light flew into the air and underwent a shocking change. It suddenly exploded, forming a red barrier that was as thin as a cicada's wing and covered the entire sky. The ordinary-looking red barrier was extremely weak and fluttered with the wind. Pucci. The invincible golden light beam came and inevitably slashed the crimson barrier. She thought that it would directly explode, but the truth was the opposite. The barrier was extremely tough. Under the ferocious impact, it displayed an unimaginable elasticity. Not only did it not break, but it also bounced off the light beam. How can such a weak move be defeated? The woman in red's eyes were filled with pride. Just as she was about to ruthlessly mock Dustless, a special energy fluctuation suddenly came from beside her. Slightly stunned, she subconsciously turned around. The scene that greeted her eyes almost made her go crazy. Unknowingly, Huey and Dustless were standing side by side. Cunning brat. The woman in red's pretty face turned ugly. Her eyes were filled with murderous intent as she glared at Dustless. Endless murderous intent was not concealed at all. A rapidly oppressive aura raged out like a tide, pressing down on Dustless and Huey. "Let's put aside our grudge for now and deal with her first." Turning his head and glancing at Huey, Dustless said coldly. Although he helped her out just now, he did not expect such a proud and strong woman like Huey to bow her head and thank him. Hearing this, Huey only indifferently glanced at Dustless. "You and her are both ambitious wolves. Both of you want to devour me and take me for your own. It also happened to coincide with what Dustless was thinking. Huiji's brows were filled with coldness and she did not appreciate it. In her opinion, Dustless and the red-clothed woman in front of her were jackals of the same tribe. They all coveted her power. Dustless's eyes flashed with displeasure and his expression turned gloomy. The strength of this mysterious invader was terrifying. In fact, he didn't want to join forces with Hui, but he had no choice. This woman was too terrifying. If he didn't join forces with Hui, it wasn't impossible for both of them to die here. Mother, the current situation is serious. Even if you ask a tiger for its skin, there is no way. If you fall into the hands of Uchiha Dustless, you will have a chance to make a comeback. If you fall into the hands of that woman, I am afraid that you will never be able to break out of the cage. Seeing that Hui was not interested in Dustless's proposal, Black Setsu suggested tentatively, and at the same time changed the thread of discussion. You should know the ability of that woman. If you are swallowed by her, it means that you will completely enter the end. Even the immortal body can't escape her decay and erosion. Please think twice before you act. The immortal body is useless. What is the origin of that woman? His expression froze, and the mysterious red-clothed woman in front of him was labeled as more dangerous. From the tone of Black Setsu, the immortal body of Hui could be easily annihilated. Black Setsu's tone was hesitant, as if he was considering whether to tell the truth of the matter to Dustless. After pondering for a while, he said, she and Mother came from the same land. She was Mother's life and death enemy since 1,000 years ago. This woman's means are also extremely cruel. Don't look at her gentle face, she is extremely cruel. Thinking of the past, Black Setsu's tone was full of fear and he said hoarsely, her ability is very strange. She can swallow everything. All creatures are nourishment for her to become stronger. Even Mother's immortal body can be swallowed. Black Setsu's tone was trembling, obviously he wasn't lying. Making everything in the world into her own nourishment? Her means are really ruthless. No wonder she has such a terrifying murderous intent. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes solidified, and the murderous intent in his eyes was awe-inspiring. Hinata, Haruo, Konan, and the other girls were still fighting with the enemy in the shinobi world. If he let the tiger return to the mountain, it means that Haruo and the other girls will become her meal. Dustless will never allow this to happen. Even if we join forces, it's useless. This woman's means are extremely strange. Her ability is similar to yours. She can also ignore most of the physical attacks. Kagaya suddenly said, agreeing with Black Setsu's previous suggestion. Although Black Setsu's previous words were unpleasant, the reality was as he said. Falling into the hands of Dustless, they may be able to break out of the cage in the future. Being swallowed by this woman means the complete end. Not necessarily. Hearing that Kagaya chose to cooperate, Dustless breathed a sigh of relief. If this woman is arrogant to the end, there is no other way in the end except to die. It's good that she is immune to physical attacks, but we are not without means to subdue her. The corner of his mouth raised into a confident description. Dustless gave a feeling of extraordinarily bright, full of vitality, looking at the woman in red, his voice was resolute and decisive. We can use Rikudo, Chibaku Tensei to seal her. The power of Rikudo, Chibaku Tensei, used by Dustless and Kagaya together is self-evident. At the beginning, the Rikudo, Chibaku Tensei, used by Otsutsuki Himura and Otsutsuki Hagoromo could easily seal Kagaya. Now, Kagaya and Kuroto joined forces to use the Rikudo, Chibaku Tensei, can easily seal Kagaya. Kagaya's expression froze slightly, and only then did she realize that the kid in front of her, who is thousands of years younger than her, also has Rinnegan and Tensigan. It's not impossible to defeat the woman in red. Chapter 382. Dustless's expression was calm, and his eyes were burning with fighting spirit. The depression in his heart turned into an endless fighting spirit. He was like an unsheathed divine sword that could destroy the world, cutting through all obstacles and sweeping through everything. The awe-inspiring fighting spirit soared into the sky, and even the air was being oppressed. Uchiha Dustless! Kagaya glanced at Dustless from the corner of her eyes, and a look of surprise flashed in her eyes. Facing such a desperate situation, Dustless could still maintain such a high fighting spirit, which really surprised her. First test her, then find a loophole and seal it. After staring at the woman in red for a while, Dustless whispered. Without waiting for Kagaya to react, his body flashed with golden light, and a straight divine rainbow whizzed out. When he reappeared, he was already behind the woman in red. The sword in his hand was sharp and ruthless, and it directly slashed towards the woman in red's head. Pucci. Dustless's expression was cold, and his killing intent soared to the sky. He did not hesitate to ruthlessly destroy the woman. The beautiful figure was cruelly split into two, turning into a bloody mist and countless dark red blood beads. Little brother, you really don't know how to be gentle with a woman. I really hope to have a wonderful night with you. In the world where I live, they all call me Mingyu, Immortal Fairy. My real name is Emo Luiyue. Her voice was filled with resentment, and her tone was filled with endless charm. Accompanied by a burning fragrance, it poured into the heart of one's heart, and the meaning behind it made one's imagination run wild. The blood beads condensed again, and Emo Luiyue, who was intact, smiled. There was a sincere smile on her mouth, but Emo Luiyue's methods were extremely ruthless. Her slender hand reached out of her sleeve, and a bloody mist floated out of her palm. It was filled with endless devouring power, as if it wanted to swallow Dustless whole. Rabbit hair needle. Dense, sharp hairs surged out rapidly, heading straight for the red-robed woman's back. They were as sharp as needles, trying to pierce through Emo Luiyue's body. She did not dare to ignore Huiji's existence. Although Emo Luiyue had the ability to defeat Huiji, she did not dare to borrow Huiji's attack with her physical body. Huiji was not as strong as her, but she was also a monster who had reached the level of God. His blood-red eyes flashed with determination as his body exploded, turning into endless blood mist, easily dodging Hui's attack. Heaven's defense. Seeing this, Hui sneered. With a gentle wave of her hand, the world in front of her seemed to be forcibly pulled into a different time and space. A shocking change occurred. Blazing heat spread between heaven and earth, the void turned fiery red, and boiling lava flowed on the ground. It had become a magma space. The scattered droplets of blood emitted a demonic light. Emo Luiyue's figure condensed once again, bringing with it a chilling killing intent. She clenched her jade-like hand into a fist and punched out without hesitation. Boom boom boom. As the seemingly ordinary punch landed, the space shattered and the void trembled. A long and narrow crack was blasted open in the horizon. The scattered fist force devoured everything. The power of the aftershock directly pierced through the rolling lava and turned the lava on the ground into nothingness. It was just a casual punch, but the area of destruction reached half the world. Huiji naturally hid in a different space to avoid the limelight. Seems like that strange move that ignores physical attacks is not invincible. She lifted her gaze and stared at the invincible Emo Luiyue, who was looking down at Dustless. There was some hope in her hopeless eyes. Strong chakra waves erupted from her body as she rose from the ground. You are courting death. The murderous aura in Emo Luiyue's blood-red eyes exploded. When Emo Luiyue saw Wu Chen charging forward without any fear, a sinister look flashed across her pretty face. There was also a hint of doubt in her eyes. Wu Chen was charging over with his original body this time. He did not use the power of light. Don't worry, I will not kill you so early. I will beat you half to death and then devour you. Emo Luiyue no longer pondered about the reason. Her expression was cold and her seemingly weak fist struck out. No matter what tricks Dustless and Huiji had up their sleeves, it was useless in the face of absolute power. Destructive fist waves rushed out, and the repaired space exploded again with a loud bang. It was extremely terrifying. Divine might. Looking at the destructive fist force calmly, Dustless smiled faintly. His body turned into a whirlpool and swallowed himself into a different space. He easily dodged the whistling fist wave. As the attack missed, the one who suffered was naturally the earth. Accompanied by a loud roar, the devastated earth once again burst open. A ravine that stretched for thousands of miles was clearly visible, dividing the entire world into two halves. Two ants from a remote village. They are not strong, but they have a lot of strange abilities. Seeing this, Emo Luiyue's expression was extremely gloomy. At this moment, she was like a child with infinite strength. Dustless and Huiji were like slippery loaches that could avoid fatal attacks every time. However, after devouring the two of you, I will be able to use all of your strange abilities. Her dark face was full of joy like a blooming flower. It was extremely beautiful. Dustless's light ability was especially attractive to Emo Luiyue. It was even more attractive than Huiji's ten-tailed beast. Suddenly, there was a strange energy fluctuation behind her. It was so weak that it was almost negligible. However, Mo Luiyue, who had an extremely strong perception, still sensed that someone was ambushing her. The space cracked and a figure emerged from the dark ancient space. It was Huiji. I knew that the two of you would attack me from the front and back. What's the use of such a pedantic strategy in front of a god? Stupid. Sensing Huiji attacking from behind, Mo Luiyue revealed a cold smile. At the same time, blood mist floated in her hand and condensed into a dark purple blood blade. How did you heal after being cut in half? I'm really looking forward to this scene. Mo Luiyue smiled evilly. The moment Huiji came close, she turned around and the dark purple blood blade in her hand pierced through Huiji's body. Chapter 383. Mo Luiyue's expression was cold. Huiji had been her archenemy for thousands of years. Of course, she held a disdainful and jealous attitude towards Huiji. She had relied on her own strength to cultivate bitterly, while Huiji had relied on external forces to obtain her strength. She had eaten the fruit of the divine tree to obtain godlike strength and was on par with Mo Luiyue. Even gods had anger, and Mo Luiyue was no exception. At the same time, because of her special physique, as long as she devoured the enemy, she could obtain all the abilities of the other party. Mo Luiyue, who was jealous of Kagaya's ability, began to invade the ninja world, and the war 1,000 years ago began. Kagaya, who relied on external forces to enter the realm of gods, was naturally not Mo Luiyue's opponent and was suppressed. Kagaya had no choice but to use the infinite Tsukuyami to resist Mo Luiyue and her subordinates. 1,000 years of grievances and entanglements ends here. Seeing the purplish-red blade pierce through Huiji's body, Mo Luiyue's lips curled up into a smile. Just as she was about to see how Huiji's body was repaired, her eyes widened as she stared at Mo Luiyue in shock. The place where she was cut in half was only emitting a faint golden light. Her body did not split as expected. Instead, it healed as if Dustless used the elemental transformation ability. The only difference was that the ability that should have belonged to Dustless appeared on Kagaya's body. Not good. She was shocked as an unprecedented danger suddenly came. Her body was about to turn into blood mist again to be immune to physical attacks, but it was too late. The ferocious force had already sent her flying. When she swung her sword to attack Kagaya, it meant that she was slower by a beat and couldn't kill her instantly. This also meant that Mo Luiyue was exposed to Kagaya's attack and had no time to dodge. 80 God's Air Attack. Thousands of fists, filled with Kagaya's anger, bombarded Mo Luiyue's delicate body like a rainstorm. One could clearly see Mo Luiyue's body being smashed into a bloody pulp. Kagaya seemed to feel that it was difficult to get rid of the monstrous hatred in her heart. Her expression was cold, and her pale face was surging with murderous intent like a demon. With a wave of her hand, tens of thousands of rays of light were released. As expected, it's a pretty good ability. That fellow is actually able to bestow his ability on me? Feeling the warm light in her body, that special power made Huey unable to stop. Her face was filled with intoxication. The power of light was something that even gods couldn't control. Now that Dustless had given her this power, she would be letting herself down if she didn't savor it. Naturally, Mo Luiyue became the focus of Huey's attention. The ability to devour, ripples appeared in the void and Dustless flew out. His eyes narrowed slightly as he saw Mo Luiyue being swallowed by the golden light. His expression was one of astonishment and he couldn't help but raise his opinion of Huiji. It's your first time using the glint fruit, yet you're already so familiar with it. You're much stronger than me. Recalling the scene when he used the glint fruit, Dustless's expression was rather awkward. Compared to Kagaya who could control it freely now, there was clearly a difference in dimensions. It doesn't seem to work. With his excellent vision, Dustless could clearly see that an unknown energy emerged from Mo Luiyue's body. She transformed into a deep-sea giant beast and easily swallowed and annihilated the previous light bullets. Like a boulder that fell into the deep sea, there was no more movement. However, Huey's ferocious 80 God's Air Attack had beaten him black and blue. There were fist marks all over his body. However, since he could be called a god, he definitely wasn't someone who could be easily defeated. Emerald light overflowed from Mo Luiyue's body and covered her entire body. She was full of vitality and was filled with boundless vitality, repairing her body. Her wounds were rapidly healing. Even if it wasn't as good as Huiji's undying body, it wasn't much worse. I can only seal her. Floating in the air, Dustless landed beside Huiji. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he said coldly, even if her body's recovery ability isn't as good as yours, it's still impossible to kill her. Only sealing her is possible. Dustless said solemnly. Although he had used the glint fruit to catch Immortality off guard, this kind of unexpected move could only be used once. I have underestimated the two of you. When exactly? After a while Immortality recovered. Her battered body was restored to its original state. Her breathing was stable and she was full of energy. The only difference was that her face was sickly pale and filled with powerlessness. Thinking of how Huiji had trampled on her, her heart was filled with anger. Boom. Raising her hands slightly, energy waves gathered in her palm. Immortality punched out mercilessly. The formation was many times more terrifying than before. The void shattered and everything was destroyed. The entire world shook violently. Dustless used his own ability to devour her once again. Huiji had obtained Dustless's glint fruit ability and didn't need to dodge. She just stood there quietly. The aftermath of the attack swallowed Huiji. Her body glowed with a faint golden light and was directly immune to it. Otherwise, she would have been seriously injured if she took the attack head-on. After the tremor, Dustless reappeared from the alternate space and stood side by side with Huiji. Giving your own power to others. Is this your ability? When did it start? Seeing this, Immortality's face turned pale. She glared at Dustless and said with a murderous intent. It seemed that if Dustless dared to hide anything he would be killed on the spot. Do I have to inform you before dealing with you? Black Zetsu couldn't help but mock from within Huiji's sleeve. Dustless didn't say anything. This was the ability of his kaleidoscope's left eye. It could give his own ability to the enemy. The only flaw was that when he gave Huiji the power of the glint fruit, he couldn't activate it himself. Chapter 384. Dustless looked at Marayu with an expressionless face, his heart filled with horror. The strength of this monstrous woman had no limit, and the vigorous and rapidly oppressive aura was clearly rising along with her anger. Their race is very strange. They can endlessly devour the lives of others and turn their abilities into their own. Marayu is a monster that has lived for thousands of years. In her long life of devouring, there must be many capable people who have been devoured by her. Kagaya explained in a deep voice. She knew Marayu far better than Dustless. Dustless nodded slightly. Being able to devour others, turn them into their own blood, and possess their abilities, this kind of innate advantage was indeed unparalleled. It could even be said that she had the same ability as Dustless's system. No matter what, we must seal her. Dustless's expression was cold. Once he and Kagaya were defeated, it meant that the entire ninja world would become this woman's new blood. Dustless was not a saint, and he did not have the heart of a saint. The life and death of people had nothing to do with him, but Dustless regarded Yuluo, Conan, and Hinata as his family. Dragons have reverse scales and those who touch them will die. Yuluo and the others were Dustless's reverse scales. Seal me? Shameless boasting. Marayu laughed coldly, looking at Dustless with blazing eyes. The ability of light was too perfect. In the face of such an extraordinary being that could resist any heaven-defying ability in the world, no one could maintain a calm heart. Suddenly, a towering shadow covered the sky. Dark clouds covered the sun, and the earth darkened. Looking up, it was Dustless and Kagaya's joint truth-seeking ball. Pouring chakra without holding back would inevitably lead to a change in quality. Dustless and Kagaya's joint truth-seeking ball was naturally extraordinary. The rapidly enlarging truth-seeking ball swallowed the world, destroying all things, and at the same time space was also being created. Naive. When Immortality saw this, she did not retreat. Instead she advanced. Ripples appeared in the void as a red figure shot out. A crimson blood blade condensed in her hand as she casually slashed out. The blood-red light was extremely strange and brutal. Along the way the space exploded. It was incomparably fragile and pulsated with a demonic luster. The moment it came into contact with the expanding truth-seeking jade, it emitted boundless light and directly swallowed the truth-seeking jade. I told you this kind of trick is useless. Immortality chuckled as she exhaled a cold breath. Just as she was about to say something to discourage Dustless and Huey, a thin figure suddenly appeared. Sorry, I didn't expect her to be of any use. Like a ghost, Dustless landed in the void several meters away from Immortality. At the same time, he said to Huey in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "I will find a way to force her back. You will ambush her from the back. When the time comes, I will activate the power of Yang and you will activate the power of Yin to seal her with Chibaku Tensei." Dustless said with a flash of determination and a strange unnatural look in his eyes. "You will force her back?" Hearing this, Huey's eyes flashed with a strange look. Her tone was filled with doubt. She didn't think that Dustless had the strength to force Mo Luoyue back. "There is no need to force yourself." Her gaze fell on Dustless's face. Seeing how determined he was, Huey didn't say anything else. She waved her hand and shattered the space, jumping in without hesitation. "Son of a concubine, you think too highly of yourself with your own strength and at the same time, you look down on me too much. Since you've delivered yourself to my doorstep, then I'll accept your body with disrespect." Mo Luoyue's blood-red eyes flashed with a demonic luster as she stared greedily at Dustless's body. Her gem-like eyes stared at Dustless's body. As long as she devoured Dustless's body, she would be able to obtain everything about Dustless. "Bring it on if you can. I promise I won't run or hide." The corners of Wu Chen's lips curled into a smile when he heard this. His calm and indifferent expression disappeared and was replaced by a look of ridicule. His bright and scorching eyes met Mo Luoyue's with a look of ridicule. Anyone could hear the provocation in his voice. "You don't know what death is." Hearing this, Mo Luoyue's face fell. Her blood-red eyes were filled with anger. Gods were not to be provoked, especially a mortal like Dustless. Although she didn't like Huey, she was still on the same level as her. The Wuchen in front of him was merely a mortal. "I will take everything from you. There is no use in running." Mo Luoyue sneered. A bone-piercing murderous aura seeped out of her body. She was obviously not joking. She moved like the wind and crossed layers of space in an instant. Even though it wasn't a beam of light, just the strength of her body moving forward was not inferior to Dustless's beam of light. In fact, it might even be better. In the blink of an eye, she arrived beside Dustless. "See, I didn't run, did I?" Seeing Missouri Luoyue close in on him, Dustless said with a smile. There was no trace of chakra either. In the depths of his eyes, there was a hint of slyness and viciousness. Obviously, Dustless had no intention of waiting for death. "Are you scared out of your wits and give up resisting?" Mo Luoyue frowned and stared at Dustless, who was so close to her. A sneer flashed across her eyes. Her Dustless was much stronger than her. It was normal for her to feel despair or be scared out of her wits. Moreover, at such a close distance, she didn't believe that Dustless had the means to subdue her. It was even more impossible for him to force her. "However, even if you give up, I won't let you go." Her white hand approached Dustless. Endless gravitational force surged out, trying to swallow Dustless whole. Bam! Strangely, white smoke suddenly burst out from Dustless's body. Countless more strange figures emerged. Mo Luoyue's face turned ashen when she saw this. The veins on her forehead bulged. She wanted nothing more than to tear Dustless into pieces. However, she did not hesitate to dodge and kick him. Looking up, she saw a group of naked men chasing after Mo Luoyue, as expected. Fortunately, I had the foresight to learn this technique from Uzumaki Naruto in advance. Dustless's lips curled into a smug smile. It was as bright as the stars. He was used to being aloof. It was not impossible for him to be a little shameless. Chapter 385. At the back, Kagaya, who was waiting for the ambush, was stunned. She looked at Mo Luoyue, who was retreating in several naked figures, and her face twitched fiercely. Shameless. With a snort, Kagaya retracted her gaze. Out of sight, out of mind. Her impression of Dustless dropped to negative. It's shameless, but it's very effective. Black Zetsu never thought that Dustless would use the legendary ultimate ninjutsu, seduction jutsu. The method was not complementary, but the effect was unusually useful. As long as it was a woman, especially for ambitious gods like Kagaya and Mo Luoyue who were extremely possessive, the way mortals looked at them was a kind of silent blasphemy. Not to mention being surrounded by a group of men who didn't even cover their bodies, it was worse than death. Dustless was also taking advantage of the mentality of these gods, who thought highly of themselves. If the other party was an ordinary female ninja with hundreds of battles of nerves, she would most likely choose to ignore them. Whoosh! A sharp sound broke through the air, and in the blink of an eye, a figure swept out. The speed was as fast as lightning and it went straight to the back of Emo Luoyue. It was Kagaya. Although she scoffed at Dustless's method at this moment, Emo Luoyue was full of flaws. Such a rare opportunity was fleeting, and there was no reason for her to let it go. She raised her lily-white hand slightly, revealing the pattern of the moon. How can I let you do as you wish? Sensing Kagaya's sneak attack, Emo Luoyue sneered. Strong energy fluctuations erupted from her body, turning into a super-strong hurricane that raged out. The naked men who came out of the seduction jutsu collapsed and were annihilated. The blade-like hurricane didn't intend to stop. Instead, it expanded and swallowed both Dustless and Kagaya, trying to stop the two's plan to surround her. Final struggle. Kagaya and Dustless's eyes flashed with indifference. Kagaya simply used Dustless's glint-glint fruit to ignore the blade storm that enveloped her body. The only difference was that Dustless, who lost the glint-glint fruit, was controlled by the red storm. Looks like your ceiling pincer attack plan has failed. A smile appeared on Emo Luoyue's face. She glanced at the temporarily suppressed Dustless and a smug look appeared in her eyes. Her voice was much more relaxed than before. If I get rid of you first, that brat won't be able to hold the fort alone. You'll be in the bag. Hearing this, a rare faint smile appeared on Huey's indifferent face. She silently raised a finger and pointed behind Emo Luoyue. The haggard figure was clearly visible. Seeing Huey looking at her with a smile that wasn't a smile, Emo Luoyue's smile froze. She turned around suspiciously only to see that annoying smiling face. Her mouth couldn't help but twitch as her perfect face flushed red. Naturally, it was Dustless. What a shocking move. If it wasn't for Shinwei, I might have really been killed. Pretending to be fearful, Dustless said with a face full of fear. The smile on his face was natural, and it was obvious that he deliberately said that to disgust Emo Luoyue. Staring at Emo Luoyue, Dustless's expression was cold. He raised his right arm, revealing the image of the sun. Huey did the same and attacked Emo Luoyue simultaneously. Chibaku Tensei. The cold voice resounded through the clouds. The two attributes of yin and yang merged together, and everything in the world was reenacted. The world stopped spinning and everything fell into confinement. In the void, countless mountain fragments appeared out of nowhere and circled around Dustless and Huey. Where there's room for mercy, there's room for mercy. I can swear that I'll never invade this world again. All of her power was imprisoned in an instant. She couldn't mobilize any energy even if she used all of her strength. Emo Luoyue gritted her teeth and put on a pitiful look. She begged Dustless for mercy. As long as you let me go, I can agree to any condition. If I violate this oath, may the heavens and earth destroy me. Tiske, even the arrogant Mingyu immortal fairy has such an ugly appearance? Huey mocked and ridiculed, looking at Emo Luoyue with eyes full of disdain. Really? Dustless looked at Emo Luoyue with a smile. Hesitation appeared on his face, as if he was hesitating whether to agree to Emo Luoyue's condition. Are you crazy? Hearing this, Huey's expression changed drastically. She glared at Dustless and suddenly remembered the seduction technique that Dustless cultivated. She gritted her teeth and said, "You are indeed a man with poor taste. An ordinary man will always be an ordinary man. No matter how strong you are, you can't get rid of the human nature hidden in your bones." Huey's eyes flashed with sadness. Dustless was a man that she could barely accept. But now he was behaving like a hooligan. "Of course, I'm willing to do anything for you, including that kind of thing." She was afraid that Dustless wouldn't understand what she meant. Her face flushed red and her watery eyes were filled with endless charm. She was like a deadly poison. She breathed out and her fragrance spread in all directions. Every frown was soul-stirring and extremely enchanting. "How can I let you take away my chastity after so many years of slimming down? After deceiving you, I will first tear you into pieces." Malice appeared in the depths of Emo Luoyue's eyes as she thought to herself. Her body moved even more vigorously, hoping to draw out Dustless's ugly nature. "Bastard!" Huey shouted angrily. She had been pure for many years and naturally didn't feel anything. But this sworn enemy of hers from 1,000 years ago didn't even flirt with her temporary ally in front of her and ignored her. How could Huey continue to remain calm? This was a covert attempt to smear her reputation. Curvy in the front and back. Long legs. Not bad. Sizing up Emo Luoyue's figure, Dustless nodded inwardly. His eyes were filled with the desire of a wolf. Clearly he was tempted. Just when Emo Luoyue thought that Dustless would let her off, His words struck her like a bolt of lightning. Her heart was dead silent. Just like what you've said before, you should spare others when you can. How can I forget the way you wanted to devour me when you were in an advantageous position? Let's bury you together with your ambitions. Chibaku Tensei. As soon as the resolute voice fell, the surrounding mountain fragments rushed over rapidly. Chapter 386. The fragments of the mountain drifted in from all directions, and no creature could escape from the boundless gravitational force. The earth cracked as the fragments rushed toward the gravitational field created by Dustless and Huiweji. Are you really so ruthless and heartless? You're worse than a beast. Emoluiue's expression changed drastically as her heart was in turmoil. Her voice was filled with sorrow. An unprecedented god had actually fallen into the hands of two ants. This could be said to be the greatest irony. Even so, Emoluiue still hadn't given up on survival. What made him even more speechless was that he hadn't expected that even after he had begged so humbly and was even willing to become a slave, Emoluiue still wouldn't let him off. The man in front of her had an indifferent expression and seemed frivolous, but his heart was as cold as an iceberg. When a man is about to die, his words are kind. When a bird is about to die, its cry is sad. How can you be worse than a bird? Also, if I conceal you, I don't think it matters whether you're a beast or not. Dustless retorted with glib words, leaving Emoluiue speechless. This was because Emoluiue had vowed not to give up until she killed Dustless. Compared to Dustless, who had only sealed her, she was much more of a beast. This was also why Dustless could remain indifferent. I'm not just worse than a bird. Even if I die, I'll drag the two of you down with me so that we can meet in the underworld. A crazed look flashed across Emoluiue's eyes as she tore away the facade of humility. Her body, which was under her control, began to emit a strange purple glow of blood. Her entire body shriveled up in an instant, like a candle flickering in the wind. Her hair turned white. Her body was pale and powerless, but there was an indescribable pressure that surrounded Dustless's mind. Ripples appeared in his calm heart as his hair stood on end. Could it be that this fellow is? Black Zetsu stared in horror at the purple blood mist emitting from Emoluiue's body. His panicked voice was filled with fear. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly retreated. Even though his reaction was extremely fast, Black Zetsu's black liquid body was still corroded by the purple blood mist. Whoosh! The white figure retreated in a flash. Of course it was Kagaya. The Chibaku Tensei that she had painstakingly created also disintegrated in an instant. The mountain fragments that came from heaven and earth fell to the ground again. Old witch, what do you mean? Livid, Dustless glared at Huiji, his killing intent surging. Since Huiji had withdrawn without being pressed, Emoluiue had also broken free from the seal. However, Emoluiue still maintained a tired expression, giving off the impression of an old man with one foot in the grave. Dustless's heart, which had been in his throat, finally calmed down. Frowning, he suddenly realized that his body was surrounded by a purplish blood-red light. It was filled with an ominous aura. It was the aura that had seeped out from Emoluiue's body. Just as he was about to ask Hui why she left, a painful scream resounded through the sky. Mother, save me. A tormented scream came from Black Zetsu's mouth. Dustless felt his scalp go numb when he heard it. If even an iron man like Black Zetsu couldn't withstand the torture, one could only imagine how terrifying it was. Looking up, Black Zetsu, which was composed of black liquid, had now turned purplish red. Is it because of the purple light from before? Seeing Black Zetsu's pained expression, Dustless's expression changed drastically. Recalling the scene of Black Zetsu being swallowed by the light, he retreated in an attempt to break free from the purple light. The ideal was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. These strange lights automatically followed and silently entered Dustless's body, no longer moving. It's useless, Black Zetsu. You should know what this is. Even I can't do anything about it. Huiji shook her head and decisively threw Black Zetsu out of her robes. Her eyes flashed with sadness. Although Black Zetsu was not born from her, it was created by the yin-yang escape. So painful. Black Zetsu, who had absorbed the purple light, turned purple like boiling water, horrifying. Those purple lights are all transformed from her pure energy. If it is eroded, not to mention you, even I will explode. Black Zetsu was still her child, Huiji said with regret. Bang! After struggling for a few seconds, Black Zetsu's body shone brightly, and then it exploded. It didn't heal like before and it didn't disappear. Damn old witch, you are ruthless, but do you think you can guarantee your safety by scheming against me like this? The corner of his mouth twitched violently. Dustless's murderous intent was awe-inspiring. His expression was gloomy, and he was aware of the sudden restless power in his body. He roared at Huey G, who was gloating. This insidious woman was obviously deliberately trapping Dustless. A man's words are kind when he is about to die, a bird's cry is sad when it is about to die. Dustless, you and I finally fought side by side. How can you be worse than a bird? Ignoring Dustless's malicious words, Huey G said with a smile, returning Dustless's previous words without missing a word. There was no need to be angry with Dustless, who was about to die. Immortality was also ignored by Huey G. This terrifying move was equivalent to self-destruction. When Dustless died, she also disappeared. Damned old monster. Dustless's face was livid. He could feel the explosive power in his body, the unstoppable power like a volcano, and the violent fluctuations crushed his body tissues and organs. If it wasn't for the fact that he defeated the six paths Abito in the system world and indirectly obtained the power of the ten tails in his body, Dustless would have been annihilated by the impact. Because of the huge vitality of the ten tails, his internal organs were healed when they were destroyed. This was also treating the symptoms but not the root cause. If he didn't deal with the violent power in his body sooner or later, he would be crushed to pieces by this terrifying power like Black Zetsu. Damn it, I only managed to drag one down with me. Looking at Huey G unwillingly, Immortality's eyes were full of disappointment. Her blood-red eyes were abnormally dim, giving people the feeling that her body was like a willow leaf blown by the wind. Such a terrifying move hurt both the enemy and herself. The power that Immortality had accumulated for thousands of years was converted into the power of self-destruction. The power was unimaginable. Once it exploded in Dustless's body, the consequences were self-evident. Could it be that I have stepped into the end of my life? Clenching his fists tightly, Dustless took a deep breath. His heart was filled with 100,000 alpacas. Since that strange energy could explode Black Zetsu, he who had gathered more purple light in his body, couldn't be safe. The end result would be a complete corpse. While he was thinking, the purple light in his body surged like a stormy sea, turning into an endless impact that crushed his limbs and bones. If it wasn't for his strong physique, Dustless's body would have been torn apart in an instant. The burning pain spread to all his nerves. Dustless's expression was abnormally ugly. If he couldn't resist this agitation, he would follow in Black Zetsu's footsteps and disappear without a trace. Boom boom boom, violent vibrations came from within his body. The purple light exploded and continuously attacked Dustless's internal organs, shattering them again and again. Roar roar roar. The scorching attack burned Dustless's rationality. Soon, Dustless's eyes turned scarlet. A low roar similar to the dying struggle of a beast came from Dustless's throat. Staring at Huey with murderous intent, Dustless lost his rationality and turned into a beast that only knew how to kill. As for Immortality, she had already exhausted her strength and died. In the desolate and strange world, only two figures were left standing, Dustless and Huey. Bastard, shouldn't she be exploding? This state is obviously similar to the simple rampaging of power that has lost control. Huey's face was gloomy. She thought that Dustless and Black Zetsu would end up the same, but the scene in front of her was unexpected. Dustless relied on his strong and solid body to temporarily support the rampaging power in his body. You can hold it for a while, but you can't hold it for a lifetime. I want to see what you can do. The heaviness on her face disappeared. Huey looked at Dustless playfully as if she saw the most interesting thing. A soul-stirring smile appeared on her iceberg face. She was as beautiful as a fairy, but no one could appreciate it. Fend for yourself, forgive me for not accompanying you. After looking at Dustless with pity for a while, Huey shook her head and said faintly. She waved her hand gently and the void in front of her exploded. She stepped into the dark space gracefully. The space gradually closed. Just as it was about to be completely sealed, a black figure invaded. Ka ka ka. The sound of a mirror shattering was suddenly heard. Huey, who was walking in the dark space, was stunned. She stopped in her tracks and turned around subconsciously. What she saw was Dustless with his scarlet eyes. Impossible, he tore the void with his bare hands. How? Bang. Before she finished her sentence, Huey's body was blasted out like a cannonball. The powerful force shook the heavens and the earth, and the entire dark space trembled violently. Ka ka ka, the blue sky exploded. A figure with long silver hair was thrown out of thin air. His body flew back for thousands of feet before he could stop. Huey's face was filled with disbelief as she stared at her sunken chest. Could this guy be controlling Maluyu's power? Huey's throat moved unconsciously. Her eyes were filled with shock and fear. Looking at the deep fist mark on her chest, she retreated instinctively. Dustless's body flew out of the dark space. With a wave of his hand, the space shattered. Dustless's scarlet eyes stared at Huey. His murderous intent spread out like tidal waves. In fact, it was the same as Huey's guess. Dustless was indeed controlling Maluyu's power temporarily. Of course, it could not be considered as complete control. The fact that it went berserk explained everything. Wuxia was only relying on his strong physical body to temporarily control the power of Maluyu. When he was exhausted, it would be the moment when he would be separated forever. Time was of the essence. He had to disperse the majestic power as soon as possible, and Huey was the most suitable target. There's something wrong with his eyes. Based on a woman's intuition, Huey instinctively felt that something was wrong. If Dustless was filled with murderous intent before, his eyes now had a different meaning. That kind of aggressive gaze contained the most primitive ambition of humans. Huey was not affected by worldly affairs, but it did not mean that she did not know what it meant. The purest and most direct possessiveness. Go to hell. Huey, who was shocked and furious, wanted to tear Dustless into pieces. The reincarnation Sharingan on her forehead released endless murderous intent. The mysterious Magatama rotated and twisted. The power of her eyes went wild and the world in front of her started to change. The unfamiliar world was empty and lifeless. It looked ordinary, but it was obviously different. Dustless and Huey's bodies seemed to be carrying millions of pounds of boulders. They fell to the ground and could not move. Dustless and Huey were the same. Without a doubt, this technique was the gravity space of the defense of heaven. Kill gray bones together. Two sharp bone spurs emerged from the palms of his hands, and pierced straight towards Wuxia. Everything that came in contact with them would be annihilated in an instant. Woo! A strange sound came from the corner of his mouth, mocking Huey's powerlessness. Dustless shot out a blood mist from his hand and the bone blades collapsed in the blink of an eye. Freak! Seeing this, Huey cursed. Her hair danced and turned into countless sharp thorns. Just as she was about to pierce Dustless into a sieve, a black shadow completely ignored the existence of gravity and rushed over like lightning. He stretched out his hand and easily subdued Huey. You're courting death. Feeling that her white and tender hand was grabbed by Wuxia, Kagaya became angry out of shame, and her chakra raged out like a flood, hoping to force Wuxia to retreat in his berserk state. It's useless. My current state was created by you. Dustless returned to normal and said to Huey with a hoarse voice. However, his body was still trembling. It was obvious that he only regained his rationality temporarily. Let go of me or else you'll have to bear the consequences. Avoiding Dustless's gaze, Huey warned fiercely. Several truth-seeking jade floated behind her, indicating that she was not joking. How you treat me is your own business. But I'm in this state because of you. You have to help me solve it. Dustless said firmly, I don't want to die now, so I can only borrow your body to help me solve the problem. Although I'm sorry, I hope you can only blame yourself. Seeing that Huey was not tactful, Dustless said straightforwardly. I'm the goddess of Mao. How can I agree with you? Her eyes were filled with anger that could burn the world. Huey was extremely regretful. If she had told Dustless in advance, he would not have been swallowed by the power of Maluyu and would not have gone berserk. She had shot herself in the foot. It's not up to you to choose. Your only mission now is to use the power of Een to help me solve this restless power in my body. Dustless said expressionlessly. His meaning was simple and clear. To put it bluntly, it was a double XIU. He didn't feel guilty at all. This was Huey G's own doing and she couldn't blame anyone else. Huey was about to refute Dustless when an energy wave came. Suddenly she felt cold. She did not know when she was exposed to the air. Dustless did not care about what Huey was thinking. He pounced on her. The restless energy wave in his body made him uncomfortable and almost made his body explode. He had to find a suitable person. Chapter 387. Time passed unknowingly, and the shinobi world war in the outside world also stopped. The shinobi allied forces and the White Zetsu army were all wiped out. Both Hinata and Cheyenne had Tensigan, and Cheyenne and Conan as well as Red Lotus, were extraordinary. Especially with the help of the corpses of the Hokage, a team of less than 10 people defeated the shinobi allied forces and the White Zetsu army in one fell swoop. Dustless in the different space naturally didn't know about this. At this moment, his consciousness was half asleep and half awake, and he seemed to hear a slight sobbing sound. After an unknown period of time, Wu Qin, who was in a daze, finally woke up. Turning his head and staring at Kagaya with a delicate face beside him, Dustless's eyes were filled with a strange color. He seemed to think of something, and the corner of his mouth twitched fiercely. He couldn't wait to slap himself in the face. Staring at the dazzling blood stains on the ground, Dustless knew that Kagaya, this big pit, will be his back from now on. But this old monster, she is quite beautiful. Looking at Huiji's delicate little face, Wuchen couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Her skin was like ice and her bones were like jade. She was like a peerless fairy who had fallen from the ninth heaven. Kagaya was a monster for thousands of years. Because of the body of the sacred tree, she was immortal and indestructible, and the years did not leave a trace on her body. Moan. As if sensing the gaze of others, Hui rubbed the corner of her pale eyes. Her entire body was weak. It was obvious that even though she was a divine tree, she couldn't withstand Wuchen's continuous attacks. After a long while, her bright eyes opened completely, revealing a little confusion and hesitation. Her gaze fell on Wuchen. Her expression was neither happy nor sad, and she didn't say anything. The words at the tip of his tongue were stuck. Wuchen originally wanted to curse out loud. If it wasn't for Huiji taking the opportunity to trick him, this situation wouldn't have happened. Later on, this kind of melodramatic thing wouldn't have happened. It was Kagaya's fault, but Dustless, after all, forcibly took her virginity, and he was not qualified to blame others. Kagaya looked at Dustless faintly, and her eyes were as calm as water. Then she retracted her gaze and waved her hand gently, and her body was wrapped in a simple robe. Thinking of Dustless's ferocious offensive, her eyes flashed with anger. "You'd better not tell anyone about this, otherwise?" The majestic murderous aura overflowed out of her body, and Kagaya warned him sternly. From her expression, it was not difficult to see that if she was not afraid of Dustless's strength, she would definitely be prepared to fight to the death. In fact, Huey's heart was extremely conflicted. Even if her strength was really comparable to Dustless, she might not be able to raise her butcher's knife when facing him again. "You can let bygones be bygones, but I have something to say. There are some things that must be agreed upon in advance." Staring at Kagaya, Dustless said. His tone was quite soft, but it was unusually firm and there was no room for disobedience. His tone was resolute and unshakable. Hearing this, Kagaya's face was livid, and she stared at Dustless with uncertainty. The surging murderous aura broke out of her body like a tide. She didn't expect Dustless to be so insatiable. She didn't haggle over every little thing, but Dustless took advantage of her. "Don't show an angry expression. Your ambition has not been terminated, and it's normal for me to be worried about you." Looking into Kagaya's eyes, Dustless said bluntly. His tone was direct and he was too lazy to hide it. Even if he had such a relationship with Kagaya, Dustless did not let down his guard and would not let Kagaya do whatever she wanted. Shameless. Clenching her teeth, Kagaya glared at Dustless. Looking at Dustless's calm face, a strange light flashed in her eyes. Her tone was as cold as a mountain as she said sarcastically, "I am a supreme existence above thousands of creatures. Why would I need to live under someone else's roof? You don't have the right to choose." Looking at Kagaya with a smile, Dustless said softly, "No matter what happened before, you are just a canary in my cage. And just now, the double, cough cough, you seem to have gotten a lot stronger." Embarrassment flashed in his eyes. Dustless, who wanted to directly talk about dual cultivation, hurriedly changed the topic and said to Kagaya in a daze. The corner of Kagaya's mouth twitched fiercely, and she glared at Dustless with a piercing gaze. Her indifferent face was like a hoodlum's at this moment, and it was especially annoying. Being a status is similar to being a little girl in bed. Of course, there is an essential difference. Her words almost made Kagaya vomit blood. She didn't remember that she wanted to rely on Dustless, especially Dustless, her mortal enemy, took her most important thing. She couldn't wait to tear him into pieces. Of course, it's not without benefits. Looking at Kagaya, a strange light flashed in his eyes. Dustless said faintly, "I can allow you to get the chakra of everyone in the world except my wife and my subordinates. War is cruel and it's difficult to describe it with words. The injured are often the lowest level of civilians. The casualties are countless. Many ninjas, including the 5 Kages, were seriously injured by the ninjas reincarnated by Kabuto. The shinobi world was full of corpses. With Dustless's permission, Kaguya didn't hesitate to reunite the scattered chakra of the world, and her strength increased sharply. She finally felt a little grateful to Dustless. As Madara said before, chakra is the source of the world's turmoil. Without this superhuman power, the world is unusually stable. Although fights happen from time to time and bloodshed is constant, it's much more peaceful than before. It's time to leave. Stimulated by Mara Yuki, Dustless's heart was not limited to this world, and his eyes looked at the world outside the universe, where the world was brighter. People's curiosity is endless, and Dustless is also full of yearning for the mysterious outer space. As for Kaguya, Haruo, and other women, Dustless naturally took them all, including Terumi Mei and Tsunade Senju. They were all seriously injured in the war, and the two of them were inextricably linked to Dustless. Of course, all of them were sealed in the system space. Chapter 388. Luxurious and quiet, in a luxurious villa inlaid with all kinds of shining gems, on a soft, furry bed, there was a pale, black-haired teenager. This person has a handsome face, delicate facial features and sharp edges. The only difference is that the young man's dress is not flattering. It looks a bit nondescript and weird. However, this strange dress is enough to make all human beings fear and look up. It hurts. After a long time, the black-haired teenager opened his eyes and stared at the luxurious ceiling. He opened his mouth and a stab of pain poured into his mind. The teenager's face was pale. A huge amount of information invaded his mind and turned into a real picture reflected in his pupils. Roy South, Saint. What kind of idiotic name is this? The voice of surprise and doubt resounded through the empty villa. Anyone could hear the astonishment in the tone and subconsciously looked at the clothes he put on. Sure enough, it's a celestial dragon. After about a while, the teenager's mouth raised a bitter smile. He was speechless and immediately understood which world he had come to. Dustless, there is no need to complain. Although this identity is notorious, the privileges are envied by others. In his mind, the dissatisfied voice of System Ling, spread, scolding Dustless for not knowing what was good for him. The identity of a celestial dragon in this world is equivalent to the existence of nuclear weapons. Not to mention ordinary civilians, even the kings of some countries and even the admirals of the navy, are afraid of the celestial dragon. Forget it, this problem is not important, but... Dustless rubbed his temples, feeling rather conflicted. Then he said speechlessly, I didn't expect the Lois family to be so tragic. Their members are so thin that they are almost extinct. Now I'm the only one left. Through the memories in his mind, Dustless knew that he was the last child of this Royce family. As a descendant of 20 kings, the identity of a celestial dragon can be imagined. However, the Royce family, which has a history of hundreds of years, is now only supported by Dustless alone. The rest of the family members have all died out. Now Dustless's identity is also a 16 or 17-year-old teenager. Of course, Dustless's appearance has not changed at this stage. There's also a fiancée that I've never met. Dustless's expression froze as he delved deeper into his memory. His body twitched a few times, and he could not help but think of the ferocious-looking fat woman who wore a bubble mask and had a big fat belly. His entire body began to tremble uncontrollably. This is interesting. I didn't expect that the celestial dragons, who are called the biggest garbage by human beings, also have a different kind of existence. The corners of his mouth raised slightly, and his face showed a surprised expression. Dustless said with a little surprise. Celestial dragons were also synonymous with trash in his eyes, but the special information in his mind made Dustless frown. There seemed to be something wrong with this world as well. It was definitely not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Who would have thought that my deceased father was actually a great general? Dustless's calm face was heavy, and his tone was slightly doubtful. Not only his deceased father, but even some of his so-called relatives had extraordinary strength. It was the opposite of the garbage that had no strength to truss a chicken. On second thought, Dustless was relieved. As the saying goes, one pole can't kill a group of people. Celestial dragons were indeed garbage, but there were also extraordinary different kinds of existence, such as people like Doflamingo. It seems that celestial dragons still have many unknown secrets, and there are things that the world government is afraid of. After about a long while, Dustless secretly speculated. The status of celestial dragons was higher than the Gorosei. If the identity of the descendant of the creator alone made the world government submit for hundreds of years, it would be unreasonable. The celestial dragons claim to be gods. Naturally, there are some unknown secrets. The 5 elder stars are also ambitious people. If the celestial dragons are a group of wine sacks, how can they bow their heads and be willing to be at the disposal of the celestial dragons? The light voice spread out, and the person who spoke was the system Linga. She continued, "This world is very mysterious. You have to be careful. The 20 kings unified the world 800 years ago, and it was not just by talking. Whether it is the world government, marine headquarters, or even the entire human race, they are extremely disgusted with celestial dragons because they have absolute privileges above all creatures. If someone attacks celestial dragons, a marine admiral will come out. So what?" Creak. Walking to the window and pushing it open, the cool evening breeze immediately came out. Dustless walked to the balcony and quietly looked down at the Holy Land, Mariehua, under the night view. The giant building in front is the residence of the Gorosei 5 elder stars, the world's highest power. The evening wind blew his hair messy like grass. "If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I will pay them back 100 times. The voice of the ancient well spread out, staring at the castle-like building in the distance. Dustless said very plainly. He was not interested in the secrets of celestial dragons, including the Mariehua national treasure, that is enough to shock the world. Living behind the scenes and turning the world upside down, this is barely the only pleasure of Dustless. "Royce South, Saint, it's time for dinner." A voice of fear and horror sounded from the room. Dustless was slightly stunned and turned his head. What came into his eyes was a young girl. She was delicate and pretty, but her watery eyes were full of fear. She didn't even dare to raise her head, and there was a black special shackle around her neck. Obviously she is Dustless's slave. "Kid, what's your name?" Turning his head and continuing to look at the waves in the distance, Dustless asked curiously. The girl he met for the first time had a feeling of déjà vu. My name is Boya Hancock." Lowering her head, she didn't dare to look at Dustless's back. She suppressed the fear in her heart and lowered her voice. "The laws that punish mortals have no effect on celestial dragons who are gods." Chapter 389. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with understanding, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, and he looked at Boa Hancock with interest, his eyes as sharp as an eagle's. After a moment of silence, Dustless's eyes dimmed. The future empress was now just a mortal, and there was nothing worthy of Dustless's attention. To put it bluntly, she was just an ant. In Dustless's words, she was extremely mediocre, without any bright spots. Even if she had eaten the devil fruit now, Dustless did not see anything special. Just glancing at Boa Hancock, Dustless left straight away, ignoring her. The room was brightly lit, the slender mahogany table was filled with all kinds of delicacies, and there were countless dazzling dishes. Staring at the dazzling array of food and delicacies, Dustless also had a big appetite for a while. When he was about to open his stomach to eat and drink, the roaring sound resounded through the sky. Boom, boom, boom. Under the cover of the dark night, the serene Mariehua burst into flames, the earth shook, and the aftermath spread to a wider area than ever before. Flames of hundreds of feet rose in the air, and the quiet void instantly turned fiery, burning unscrupulously. The temperature of the void increased by dozens of times, melting all the buildings into a solution. Just after the blink of an eye, the shouts of killing connected together. This is interesting. After swallowing the food that was sent to his mouth, the majestic perception spread out, and he noticed that there were suddenly many rioting slaves in the usually quiet Mariehua. He frowned, and doubts inevitably rose in his heart. So that's how it is it the date 16 years ago when Mariehua was invaded? With a strange smile at the corner of his mouth, Dustless wiped his hands and a look of enlightenment flashed in his eyes. The only person who invaded Mariehua in the world was the master of the Murlocs, Fisher Tiger. He is quite bold to dare to invade Mariehua. His fingers gently tapped on the long mahogany table, making a rhythmic sound. Dustless directly took a nap, turning a deaf ear to the outside disturbance, and the thoughts in his mind began to turn. How can a clown have the ability to invade Mariehua, but a half-baked person with a bounty of more than 200 million berries? Even if he once knew Mariehua, it is impossible for him to have the ability to invade. When he opened his eyes again, Dustless was full of doubts. A criminal with a bounty of about 200 million berries, his strength is only about the level of an ordinary Marine Vice Admiral, and even worse than a Vice Admiral in Marine. There is something strange, there must be a conspiracy. There was a strange color in his eyes, and Dustless's heart was splashed with ripples. He remembered that Tiger's bounty was 230 million berries, which was the bounty after he successfully liberated the slaves. Now he is just an unknown character who has not yet been offered a bounty. Even if he has the strength comparable to a Marine Vice Admiral, it is not justifiable for Mariehua to be invaded so simply. Bang bang bang. When Dustless was thinking about it, a rush of footsteps suddenly came from the dark corridor. Looking up, several big men in black suits hurried over. They could not wait to surround and protect Dustless. Louis South, Saint, Mariehua has been invaded, we will escort you away now. The man in sunglasses, who was obviously the leader of this group of people, said with eagerness, and even Dustless did not speak and directly dragged him away. Where are you taking me? Have other Tenryubito also been taken? With an indifferent look, Dustless's voice was magnetic, not as grumpy as other Tenryubito, not knowing etiquette, and giving people the feeling that it was more like a casual conversation between friends. Several big men were stunned. The arrogance and unreasonableness of Tenryubito was known all over the world. The man in front of them was surprisingly calm and gave people a very amiable feeling. Yes, Louis South, Saint, many other Tenryubito were also secretly protected. The slaves who broke out of the prison slaughtered Tenryubito wantonly. The man in the suit with glasses said, these slaves were oppressed all year round, and their hatred for Tenryubito was self-evident. Once they were liberated, they would inevitably fight against Tenryubito. Is it? Hearing this, Wu Chen's face flashed with a cold light, and a glaring killing intent swept out. A tyrannical repulsive force broke out from his body, and the black-clothed men who clustered around Wu Chen were instantly sent flying. Their bones were broken, their internal organs were dislocated, their eyes were dim, they lost their luster, and they were dying. They looked at Dustless incredulously. It's funny, don't you think so? Sitting back again, Dustless looked at the half-dead people lying on the ground, and the corners of his mouth raised, showing a contemptuous smile. Mariehua is really the darkest place, and the strategy of killing with a borrowed knife is a set of tricks. Louis South, Saint, what are you talking about? We don't understand what you mean. A group of big men with sunglasses looked at Dustless in confusion, and even the repulsion that Dustless exerted was out of the sky, and they looked at Dustless with puzzled doubts. Don't understand? That's natural. Sitting down leisurely, Wu Chen once again enjoyed his wine and delicacies. He ignored the existence of these people and said, if you guys knew the inside story, perhaps your heads would have been separated from your body. Of course, it is precisely because you will never understand the reason that you are destined to be a worm crawling at the bottom for the rest of your life. After that, Dustless did not wait for several people to react, and his whole body surged with repulsion, and all the matter centered on himself was annihilated and collapsed, turning into dust and disappearing. With Fisher Tiger's strength, even if he used to be a slave of Tenryubito and is familiar with the geographical structure of Mariehua, he has no ability to invade the Holy Land. He is still too far away. There must be a secret existence that no one knows. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.